On the 22nd of December 1938, Marjorie Courtney Latimer sifted through a trawler's catch in the port of East London, South Africa, and pulled from the pile a 5-foot fish with limb-like fins and an armored skull. She had found a living coelacanth, a creature known only from fossils that vanished from the geological record 66 million years ago, a ghost from the age of reptiles swimming in the modern day. Let the weight of the day drift away, and let your body settle into the dark. We are going somewhere. There is time. The lights can stay dim, and the coelacanth is not alone down there. Beneath the reach of sunlight, the deep sea keeps its own museum of survivors, lineages that outlasted every extinction event that shattered the surface world. The Nautilus has drifted in its spiral shell for 500 million years. The horseshoe crab has crawled the seafloor for 450 million, and the giant isopod, a pale armored scavenger, has plodded through the abyss for 160 million years, long before the first dinosaur ever shook the earth. These are the living fossils, and their slow, patient world is still waiting beneath the waves. In the vast, silent theater of the natural world, there exists a category of life that seems to have refused the very notion of change. These are the living fossils, organisms whose forms have persisted through epochs so immense that entire dynasties of reptiles have risen and vanished around them. The term itself carries a poetic weight, suggesting creatures frozen in amber, yet their reality is far more dynamic and scientifically profound. To understand them, one must first travel to the most remote and least comprehended environment on our planet, the deep ocean, a realm where time itself appears to move at a different pace. The phrase living fossil was not born from a modern press release, but was coined by Charles Darwin in his seminal work on the origin of species, published in 1859. Darwin used the term to describe living species that exhibit a striking resemblance to fossils found in ancient strata, organisms that appear to have remained unchanged for vast stretches of geological time. He famously cited the platypus and the lungfish as prime examples, creatures that seem to bridge the gaps between distinct classes of animals. In the scientific sense, a living fossil is not a creature that has literally stopped evolving, for no organism can entirely escape the subtle pressures of its environment. Instead, it refers to a species that exhibits morphological stasis, meaning its physical form, its skeleton, its shell, or its general body plan has remained remarkably consistent over tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions, of years. This concept of morphological stasis is the cornerstone of understanding these ancient lineages, and it directly challenges the intuitive notion that evolution always produces visible change. When we picture evolution, we often imagine a relentless march toward complexity, a constant branching and diversifying into new shapes and functions. However, the fossil record reveals a more nuanced story, one where many lineages achieve a successful form and then, quite simply, stick with it. The evolutionary pressure to alter a body plan that already functions exceptionally well within a stable environment is incredibly low, and this leads to a phenomenon known as stabilizing selection. In this process, natural selection actively favors the average, intermediate forms of a trait, weeding out the extremes and thus preserving the status quo of the species' anatomy. Beyond the simple weeding out of extremes, there are deeper biological mechanisms that enforce this ancient conservatism. One such mechanism is canalized development, a concept that describes the robustness of an organism's developmental pathways. An embryo's growth is guided by a complex network of genetic instructions that have been refined over millions of years, and these pathways are often so deeply entrenched that they are resistant to perturbation. Mutations may occur, but the developmental system is so well buffered that it produces the same standard outcome, effectively correcting for any minor genetic errors and ensuring that the adult form remains true to its ancient blueprint. This developmental canalization acts as a powerful internal force, locking the organism into a specific morphology that has proven its viability time and time again. Coupled with these internal constraints is the external force of niche conservatism, which is the tendency of a species to retain its fundamental ecological niche over long periods. A niche is not just a habitat, but the sum total of an organism's interactions with its environment, including its food sources, its predators, and its preferred physical conditions. If a species has carved out a successful existence in a specific niche, the selective pressures to adapt to a new one are minimal. The organism is already perfectly suited to its role, and any significant change in its body plan might actually disrupt its ability to perform its daily functions. Therefore, the species remains in its ecological lane, and its physical form remains a constant, a perfect fit for an unchanging role. This brings us to the grand stage where this evolutionary drama plays out: the deep ocean. The deep sea is not merely a darker version of the surface world. It is a fundamentally different environment, governed by physical laws that create a realm of unparalleled stability. Beginning at the edge of the continental shelf, around 200 meters down, the environment transitions into a world of eternal night, crushing pressure, and frigid temperatures. The most critical factor for the preservation of ancient life is the constancy of this environment. At depths below a few thousand meters, the temperature hovers perpetually near a chilling 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, a figure that has remained essentially unchanged for tens of millions of years. There are no seasons in this abyss, no summer thaw or winter freeze, and the sun's light, which drives the cyclical rhythms of surface life, never penetrates this darkness. The stability of the deep ocean extends far beyond its temperature, encompassing its very chemistry. The salinity of the deep sea is remarkably uniform, sitting at a consistent 34 to 35 parts per thousand across the globe, a balance that has been maintained for eons. This chemical constancy provides a predictable osmotic environment for the creatures that live there, meaning they do not have to constantly adapt to changing salt concentrations as their shallow water cousins do. Furthermore, the deep ocean is largely insulated from the short-term climatic fluctuations that wreak havoc on terrestrial and shallow marine environments. While ice ages have come and gone, dramatically altering sea levels and surface temperatures, the deep basins have remained a cold, dark, and chemically stable refuge. This is the key to understanding the evolutionary refugium, a sanctuary where the relentless pressures of a changing world are muted, allowing ancient lineages to persist. In this stable world, the primary selective pressure is not the need to innovate, but the need to survive on incredibly scarce resources. The deep ocean is a food desert, as the vast majority of organic matter that fuels life originates from the sunlit surface waters through photosynthesis. This marine snow, a gentle perpetual fall of dead plankton, fecal pellets, and other organic detritus, takes weeks to drift down to the abyssal plains. By the time it arrives, it is a meager, nutrient-poor remnant of its former self. This profound scarcity of food has driven the evolution of deep-sea life down a very different path than its surface counterparts. Instead of selecting for speed, elaborate defenses, or complex hunting strategies, the deep sea selects for extreme metabolic efficiency, favoring organisms that can survive on a fraction of the energy required by their shallow water relatives. This selection for efficiency over innovation is a crucial departure from the common narrative of evolution as a progressive drive toward complexity. In the deep sea, an organism with a high metabolism, a fast reproductive rate, or a complex body plan requiring constant energy input would quickly starve. The winners in this environment are the ones that have mastered the art of doing very little, of conserving every ounce of energy. This can manifest as a slow, almost imperceptible mode of movement, a reduced metabolic rate that allows an animal to go for months without a meal, or a simple, streamlined body plan that requires less energy to build and maintain. The selective pressure here is overwhelmingly against change. A mutation that leads to a new structure or a faster swimming speed is not an advantage, but a dangerous liability that could consume the precious energy reserves needed for survival. The concept of selection pressure is central to understanding why ancient body plans persist in this environment. In the surface world, selection pressures are dynamic and intense, driven by changing climates, evolving predators, and shifting food sources. These pressures constantly cull the population, favoring individuals with new, advantageous traits. In the deep sea, however, the selection pressure is static and unidirectional, focused almost entirely on energy conservation. When the primary challenge is a constant, unchanging lack of food, there is no advantage to be gained from morphological change. The body plan that was efficient 100 million years ago remains efficient today because the rules of the game have not changed. The absence of a diverse array of selective pressures acts as a preservative, a cosmic formaldehyde that keeps the ancient forms in a state of evolutionary suspended animation. This stability is not just a temporary condition, but a geological reality that has persisted for hundreds of millions of years. While the surface of the Earth is a chaotic mosaic of shifting continents and changing climates, the deep ocean basins have remained remarkably consistent. The theory of plate tectonics explains how continents drift across the globe, opening and closing oceans, and creating and destroying mountain ranges. These massive geological events have rearranged the geography of the planet, altering ocean currents and sea levels, and yet the fundamental characteristics of the deep sea have remained constant. The deep basins have always been cold, dark, and under immense pressure, and their water chemistry has remained within a habitable range for life. The chemical composition of seawater, particularly the balance of major ions like sodium, chloride, and magnesium, has been buffered by interactions with the seafloor and the crust over immense timescales, creating a stable chemical environment that has persisted through the breakup of Pangaea and the assembly of the modern continents. It is this combination of physical, chemical, and biological stability that creates the perfect conditions for evolutionary stasis. The deep ocean is a living museum, not because it is a static, dead place, but because its unchanging conditions have removed the incentives for change. The creatures that live there are not primitive in a pejorative sense. They are highly specialized survivors, exquisitely adapted to a world that is alien to us. They are the products of evolution, but an evolution that has been channeled into a narrow, highly successful path of energy efficiency and morphological conservatism. The ancient body plans we see there are not failures to evolve, but rather perfect solutions to a problem that has not changed in hundreds of millions of years. This is the profound truth of the living fossil, a testament to the power of stability and a reminder that evolution is not always about change, but sometimes about the remarkable persistence of a successful form. As we descend into this abyssal realm, we are not traveling back in time, but rather into a space where time has had a different effect. The inhabitants of the deep have not been frozen by a sudden catastrophe, but have been gently carried along by a current of constancy, their forms held in a delicate equilibrium by the very forces that make their world so inhospitable to us. The scarcity of food has not made life impossible, but has instead sculpted a community of specialists who have mastered the art of survival in a slow-motion world. This is the foundation upon which our entire understanding of these ancient mariners is built, a foundation of geological time, biological constraint, and a unique environment that has served as an arc for life's most enduring designs. The story of the living fossils is ultimately a story of the profound relationship between an organism and its environment, a relationship so perfectly balanced that it has allowed life to outlast the very continents themselves. The concept of the living fossil carries with it a certain philosophical weight, for it challenges our intuitive sense of time as a linear progression toward complexity. In the shallow sunlit waters of the world, evolution often appears as a restless engine, constantly refining and reshaping life in response to changing seasons, predators, and competitors. Yet, in the deep sea, the clock seems to run at a different pace, where the pressures that drive rapid change are muted by the sheer stability of the environment. Temperature, salinity, and pressure have remained remarkably constant for millions of years, creating a kind of temporal bubble in which the selective forces that favor novelty are largely absent. The result is a biological conservatism, a tendency for successful forms to persist because there is simply no environmental impetus to alter them. This stability is not merely a passive absence of change, but an active force that shapes the very physiology and life history of deep-sea organisms. Metabolic rates in the abyss are often a fraction of those seen in surface dwellers, a direct adaptation to the scarce and sporadic supply of organic matter that drifts down from above. With such slow metabolisms, generations stretch over decades, and the turnover of populations occurs at a pace that is almost imperceptible to human observation. This slow-motion existence means that genetic mutations, the raw material of evolutionary change, accumulate at a much slower rate within these populations. The result is a genetic inertia, where the molecular clocks of these creatures tick so slowly that their forms remain recognizable across vast stretches of geological time. The theory of refugia suggests that the deep sea has served as a sanctuary for lineages that have been outcompeted or exterminated elsewhere on the planet. In shallow waters, dramatic shifts in climate, sea level, and ocean chemistry have repeatedly wiped out entire ecosystems, forcing survivors to adapt, migrate, or perish. But the abyssal plains, trenches, and seamounts exist in a realm buffered from these surface catastrophes. Even during the most severe mass extinctions, when the surface oceans became anoxic or lethally warm, the deep waters often retained enough oxygen and stable temperatures to support life. This is not to say the deep sea was entirely immune, but rather that its extreme conditions provided a buffer, a slow-diffusing refuge where ancient lineages could wait out the storms above. One must consider the concept of ecological niche conservatism, which posits that species tend to retain their ancestral ecological requirements over time. For a deep-sea creature, its niche is defined not by competition with brightly colored reef fish or the chase of agile predators, but by the subtle gradients of pressure, temperature, and food availability. When a lineage becomes exquisitely adapted to these specific conditions, any deviation from them becomes costly and dangerous. The selective pressure to stay the same, to maintain a perfect fit with an unchanging environment, is often stronger than the pressure to explore new possibilities. This is the opposite of the evolutionary arms race seen in coral reefs, where speed and novelty are rewarded. In the abyss, the prize goes to those who can simply endure. The very concept of a living fossil is, however, a human construct that requires careful interpretation, for no species is truly frozen in time. Genetic studies of creatures like the coelacanth have revealed that while their body plan has remained remarkably stable, their genomes have continued to accumulate changes, some of which may be neutral and others adaptive to subtle shifts in their environment. The term is best understood as a description of morphological stasis, a visible constancy of form that belies a quieter molecular evolution happening beneath the surface. This stasis is a testament to the idea that evolution is not always a march toward greater complexity, but can be a process of fine-tuning a design that is already perfectly suited to its surroundings. The deep-sea refugia theory also relies on the concept of the deep sea as a highly connected yet isolated environment, a paradox that is key to its role as a haven. The global ocean conveyor belt, a vast system of currents that circulates water around the planet, ensures that deep waters are never truly cut off from one another. This connectivity allows for the dispersal of larvae and the mixing of populations, preventing the kind of isolated speciation that might otherwise occur in a static environment. Yet at the same time, the extreme pressure and darkness create a formidable barrier to colonization from shallow waters, meaning that new arrivals are rare and usually must be pre-adapted to the abyssal conditions. This combination of connectivity and isolation creates a unique evolutionary arena where ancient lineages can spread widely without being swamped by new competitors. When we speak of the persistence of living fossils, we must also acknowledge the role of extinction. For the deep sea is not a place where life is easy, but rather where life is possible under the most stringent of constraints. The scarcity of food means that populations are often small and widely dispersed, making them vulnerable to any sudden change in the reign of organic matter from the surface. Yet the very stability of the deep sea has allowed these populations to persist for so long that they have become integral parts of the ecosystem, their presence shaping the very sediments and nutrient cycles around them. The longevity of these lineages is not a sign of weakness or stagnation, but of a remarkable resilience, a capacity to survive when all around them has changed. The deep sea is also a place where the concept of time itself seems to warp, where the slow accumulation of sediment on the seafloor represents a history that is measured in millions of years per meter. For a creature living in this environment, a single generation might span the rise and fall of entire dynasties of shallow water species. This temporal disconnect means that the selective pressures acting on deep-sea life are not the frantic, short-term fluctuations of surface ecosystems, but the slow, inexorable changes of plate tectonics and ocean basin formation. A lineage that is well adapted to the conditions of a particular abyssal plain might remain unchanged for tens of millions of years, simply because the seafloor itself is moving and changing at a pace that is imperceptible to the organism. The theoretical framework for understanding living fossils thus rests on a foundation of environmental stability, metabolic constraint, and the power of ecological specialization. The deep sea is not a museum of dead forms, but a living library of evolutionary solutions that have proven their worth over eons. Each creature we encounter on our descent is a testament to the idea that survival is not always about being the fastest or the strongest, but about finding a niche that is so stable that change becomes unnecessary. The pressure of the deep, the cold, and the dark are not adversities to be overcome, but constants that have been woven into the very fabric of these animals' existence. As we continue our descent, we must also consider the role of chance, for the history of life is not a deterministic path, but a series of contingent events. The survival of a particular lineage in the deep sea may have depended on a chance encounter, a lucky mutation, or a fortuitous shift in ocean currents millions of years ago. Once a lineage becomes established in the abyss, its very presence alters the environment, creating new opportunities for other organisms and reinforcing the stability of the ecosystem as a whole. This intricate web of cause and effect, stretching back through geological time, is the true story of the living fossil, a narrative that is still being written in the dark waters below. The persistence of these ancient forms also invites us to reconsider our own place in the grand timeline of life on Earth. We humans are relative newcomers, our entire evolutionary history compressed into a few million years, a mere blink of an eye compared to the hundreds of millions of years that some deep-sea lineages have endured. The living fossils are not relics of a primitive past, but contemporaries who have witnessed the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, the drift of continents, and the coming and going of ice ages. Their survival is a humbling reminder that our own species, for all its technological prowess, is but a temporary phenomenon in the long and patient story of life. The deep-sea refugia theory is not without its critics, for some scientists argue that the deep sea has also experienced periods of significant change, such as during the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, when deep-sea temperatures rose dramatically. During such events, many deep-sea species did go extinct, and the composition of benthic communities shifted significantly. This suggests that the deep sea is not an entirely static refuge, but rather a dynamic environment that can undergo periods of rapid change, albeit on timescales that are far longer than those seen in surface ecosystems. The living fossils we see today are therefore not survivors of every catastrophe, but rather the descendants of lineages that managed to endure the most extreme perturbations, their resilience honed by millions of years of slow-motion adaptation. This nuanced view of the deep sea as a refuge is essential for a proper understanding of living fossils, for it acknowledges that even the most stable environments are subject to the forces of geological change. The key to their persistence lies not in absolute constancy, but in a degree of stability that is high enough to prevent the rapid turnover of species, yet low enough to allow for the slow, gradual adaptation of lineages to the shifting conditions of the seafloor. The abyssal plane is not a static painting, but a slow-motion film, where the frames change so gradually that the eye of evolution perceives only a seamless, unchanging image. The theoretical framework we have built here points to a profound conclusion. The deep sea is not a place of evolutionary death, but a crucible of evolutionary endurance. It is a realm where the relentless clock of natural selection is slowed by the very conditions that make it so inhospitable to us. The living fossils that inhabit this world are not anomalies, but rather the natural product of a unique set of environmental pressures that favor stability over novelty. As we prepare to meet these ancient mariners face to face, we do so with the understanding that we are not looking at the past, but at a living, breathing present that has simply chosen to endure, to persist, and to remain true to a design that has proven its worth over the ages. The persistence of these ancient lineages hinges on a delicate interplay between selective pressure and environmental predictability. In the deep sea, the primary forces that drive rapid evolutionary change elsewhere, such as predation pressure, seasonal resource pulses, and physical disturbance from storms, are drastically muted or entirely absent. A brachiopod clinging to a manganese nodule experiences a world where the temperature, salinity, and oxygen levels remain virtually unchanged for millennia, and where the next meal may arrive as a sporadic flurry of marine snow from the sunlit waters above. This absence of acute directional stress means that the fitness landscape is relatively flat, with no single trait conferring a decisive advantage over another, thereby reducing the impetus for morphological innovation. The concept of stabilizing selection becomes paramount in such an environment, acting as a powerful conservative force that culls any significant deviation from the established form. In shallow water, a slight variation in shell shape might offer better protection from a new predator, quickly sweeping through the population. Here, however, a similar mutation offers no such advantage, and the energy cost of producing a novel structure may even prove detrimental in a nutrient-poor habitat, where metabolic efficiency is the ultimate currency. The result is a genetic and developmental canalization, where the pathways that build the organism are so deeply entrenched and finely tuned that any major alteration is more likely to break the system than to improve it. This is not a passive stagnation, but an active suppression of change, a biological conservatism that has been honed by eons of successful survival in a world that does not ask for more. The deep-sea refugia theory further posits that these environments have served as a kind of evolutionary archive, preserving not just species but entire body plans that were once widespread in shallower seas. When global catastrophes, such as the Permian-Triassic extinction event, swept across the planet, they disproportionately affected shallow water habitats, which are subject to rapid changes in temperature, ocean chemistry, and anoxia. The deep sea, with its immense volume and thermal inertia, was shielded from the worst of these fluctuations, providing a sanctuary for lineages that were either eliminated or severely marginalized elsewhere. As these survivors persisted in the abyss, they became the last representatives of their ancient clades, their existence a testament to the protective power of depth and distance from the turbulent surface. This theory is supported by the observation that many living fossils, such as the coelacanth and the horseshoe crab, have a fossil record that shows they were once far more diverse and geographically widespread, occupying a variety of shallow water niches. Their retreat to the deep sea or to specific stable refugia is not a story of evolutionary failure, but of strategic withdrawal in the face of changing conditions. The deep sea offered a low-competition environment where they could continue to exploit their existing ecological roles without needing to adapt to new predators or competitors. This ecological release allowed them to persist for hundreds of millions of years, effectively frozen in time, while their shallow water relatives diversified, thrived, and eventually perished in the relentless march of geological time. The rate of evolutionary change, or the molecular clock, in these deep-sea species is often found to be exceptionally slow when compared to their shallow water counterparts. This is partly due to the long generation times of many deep-sea organisms, which can live for centuries, and partly due to the lack of selective pressure to fix new mutations. The genetic code of a deep-sea amphipod or a stalked crinoid may accumulate changes at a glacial pace, preserving the ancestral sequence with remarkable fidelity. This genetic stability is the raw material for morphological stasis, as the proteins and developmental pathways they encode remain essentially unchanged, producing the same body plan generation after generation. It is a form of evolutionary inertia, where the vast momentum of a successful design carries it forward through time, untouched by the forces that reshape life in more dynamic environments. The reproductive strategies of these ancient creatures also contribute to their longevity as living fossils. Many species in the deep sea exhibit slow growth, late maturity, and low fecundity, investing their limited energy in producing a few, well-provisioned offspring rather than thousands of fragile larvae. This K-selected strategy is a direct adaptation to a stable environment where population sizes are typically limited by food availability, not by predation. In such a system, there is little advantage to rapid reproduction or large brood sizes, as the environment can only support a certain number of individuals. This slow life history further slows the rate of genetic turnover, as each generation takes many years to replace the last, giving evolution even less opportunity to act. The result is a population that is genetically and morphologically highly uniform, a snapshot of a lineage that has found its optimal solution and has no reason to change it. The physical structure of the deep seafloor itself acts as a stabilizing agent, providing a vast and relatively homogeneous habitat that spans entire ocean basins. Unlike the fragmented and ephemeral habitats of coral reefs or kelp forests, the abyssal plain is a continuous expanse of sediment, punctuated only by occasional seamounts and hydrothermal vents. This uniformity means that a species adapted to life on the abyssal ooze can migrate across thousands of kilometers without encountering a fundamentally different environment, allowing for gene flow and preventing the isolation that often leads to speciation. The lack of geographic barriers in the deep sea means that populations remain connected, and any advantageous gene can spread throughout the entire species range, but the lack of differing selective pressures means that no such gene is likely to arise. This combination of high connectivity and low selective pressure is the perfect recipe for evolutionary stasis, a state of equilibrium that can persist for geological epochs. The concept of the living fossil, therefore, is not a biological curiosity, but a fundamental insight into the nature of evolutionary time and environmental stability. These organisms demonstrate that evolution is not a linear progression towards greater complexity, but a branching tree where some lineages are simply better suited to their environment than others. In the deep sea, the environment has remained remarkably constant, and so the organisms that are best adapted to it have remained remarkably constant as well. They are a living experiment, showing us what happens when the clock of evolution is slowed to a near standstill, allowing us to peer directly into the deep history of life on our planet. As we descend further into the abyss, we are not just traveling in space, but also in time, moving towards a world that has been largely untouched by the dramatic events that have shaped the surface of the Earth. The story of the coelacanth begins not in the deep, dark waters where it now dwells, but in the ancient rocks of the Devonian period, over 400 million years ago. This was a time before the dinosaurs walked the Earth, before the first forests stretched their roots into the soil, and long before the first creatures crawled onto land. The ancestors of the coelacanth were already swimming in the primordial seas, their heavy lobed fins propelling them through a world of ancient reefs and strange armored fish. These were the actinistians, a lineage of lobe-finned fishes that would persist through immense stretches of geological time, surviving every major extinction event that followed. For scientists, the story of the coelacanth was, for a very long time, a story written entirely in stone. The fossil record revealed a group of fishes with a distinctive suite of anatomical features, a body plan that appeared remarkably stable over millions of years. Paleontologists could trace their presence from the Devonian, through the Carboniferous, Permian, and into the Mesozoic era, the age of the dinosaurs. The fossils showed a fish with a robust, heavy skull, thick scales, and those characteristic lobed fins, supported by a central axis of bone that resembled the limb bones of four-legged animals. This anatomical arrangement placed them in a crucial position in the tree of life, as close relatives to the ancestors of all terrestrial vertebrates. The fossils painted a picture of a fish that had seemingly perfected its design early on, a form so successful that it remained virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. The last known fossil coelacanths appeared in the Cretaceous period around 66 million years ago, at the same time as the great asteroid impact that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs. After that, the fossil record fell silent. The coelacanth, it was assumed, had gone the way of the dinosaurs, a victim of the same global catastrophe, leaving behind only its stony remains as a testament to its long and successful reign. The scientific consensus was clear, and the coelacanth was relegated to the pages of paleontology textbooks, a classic example of an extinct lineage. That consensus was shattered on the 22nd of December, 1938. On that day, a young museum curator named Marjorie Courtney Latimer was at the harbor in East London, South Africa, waiting for the return of a fishing trawler. She was a regular visitor to the docks, hoping to find interesting specimens for the small museum she managed, and on this particular day, her patience was rewarded in a way she could never have imagined. The trawler, captained by Hendrik Goosen, had been trawling the waters of the Indian Ocean, and among the usual catch of sharks, rays, and other fish, there was something extraordinary. As Courtney Latimer examined the pile of fish on the deck, she saw it, a large, strange creature with a shimmering blue sheen and fins that looked almost like limbs. She later described it as the most beautiful fish she had ever seen, with 4 lobed fins, a peculiar dog-like snout, and a tail that had an extra, smaller lobe in the middle. It was unlike anything she had ever encountered in her collections or in any book she had read. Recognizing its potential importance, she made arrangements to have it transported back to the museum, a task that was not easy, as the fish was large and the day was hot. Once at the museum, Courtney Latimer worked frantically to preserve the specimen, but it was too large for her available tanks of formalin. With no other option, she decided to have the fish skinned and its internal organs preserved separately, a process that would, thankfully, retain the crucial features for scientific study. She sent a sketch and a description to a professor at Rhodes University in Grahamstown, a chemist and amateur ichthyologist named J.L.B. Smith. It was Smith who would ultimately understand the true magnitude of the discovery, but his initial reaction was one of disbelief and astonishment. When Smith received the letter and sketch in early January of 1939, he was immediately struck by the creature's features: the lobed fins, the unusual tail, and the distinctive scales. He recognized it instantly as a coelacanth, a fish that was supposed to have been extinct for 70 million years. The revelation was so staggering that he later wrote that he felt like a man who had stumbled upon a living dinosaur in the African bush. He rushed to East London to see the specimen for himself, and upon examining it, his identification was confirmed. The impossible had happened. A living fossil from the age of dinosaurs had been brought into the 20th century. Smith named the fish Latimeria chalumnae in honor of Marjorie Courtenay Latimer, who had discovered it, and the Chalumna River, near whose mouth the fish had been caught. The scientific world was sent into a frenzy, and the coelacanth became an instant celebrity, a biological marvel that defied all expectations. However, the specimen was a single individual, and many questions remained. Where did this fish come from? Were there more of them? For 14 long years, these questions went unanswered, and the coelacanth remained a tantalizing mystery, a ghost from the deep that had appeared only once. The search for a second specimen became an obsession for J.L.B. Smith. He plastered the coasts of Africa and the Indian Ocean islands with posters offering a substantial reward for any new coelacanth. But the years passed with no success. Then, in December of 1952, a fisherman on the island of Anjouan in the Comoros archipelago, between Madagascar and the African mainland, caught a strange fish that he recognized from Smith's descriptions. The local authorities, aware of the reward and the scientific importance, preserved the fish and sent word to Smith. When Smith finally saw the photographs of this second specimen, his joy was immense, and the mystery of the coelacanth's home was finally solved. This second specimen, caught in the Comoros, was almost identical to the first, confirming that a viable population of coelacanths existed in the deep waters around these volcanic islands. The discovery also shifted the scientific understanding of the fish's range and habitat. It was not a fish of shallow coastal waters, but a denizen of the deep, living in steep, rocky slopes and underwater caves at depths of 150 to 700 meters. This explained why they had remained hidden for so long, as these habitats were largely inaccessible to the fishing methods of the time. For decades, the coelacanth was thought to be a single, rare species confined to the western Indian Ocean. This view changed dramatically in 1997, when a marine biologist named Mark Erdman and his wife, Arnaz Mehta, were on vacation in Indonesia. While visiting a local fish market in Manado, on the island of Sulawesi, they noticed a strange fish being wheeled by on a cart. It was large, with the unmistakable lobed fins and the deep blue color of a coelacanth. They had stumbled upon a second population of these ancient fish thousands of miles away from the Comoros. The Indonesian specimen was eventually confirmed to be a distinct species, and in 1999 it was formally described and named Latimeria menadoensis, after the city of Manado, where it had been found. The discovery of a second living species of coelacanth was a stunning revelation, proving that the lineage was more diverse and more widely distributed than previously imagined. It also raised profound questions about the evolutionary history of these fish and how two distinct populations had come to exist so far apart, separated by the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean. The biology of the coelacanth is as remarkable as its history. Its most distinctive feature is its lobed fins, which are supported by a fleshy, muscular lobe that extends from the body. These fins are not used for walking along the seafloor, as was once popularly imagined, but rather for a slow, graceful form of sculling. The coelacanth moves by gently undulating its body and fins, often drifting backwards or upside down to navigate the steep walls of its cave habitat. This method of locomotion is highly efficient for a fish that lives in a low-energy environment, allowing it to conserve energy and move with a deliberate, almost ghostly grace. Internally, the coelacanth possesses several unique anatomical features that set it apart from all other living vertebrates. Its backbone is not made of solid, interlocking vertebrae, but rather of a hollow, fluid-filled tube, a feature that unites it with the ancient actinistian fishes. This notochord, as it is called, provides structural support while allowing for flexibility and buoyancy. Another extraordinary feature is the intracranial joint, a true hinge in the middle of the skull that allows the front half of the head to pivot upwards relative to the back half. This joint is a primitive characteristic, found in fossil fishes, but is unique among living vertebrates. The coelacanth also possesses a peculiar organ located in its snout, known as the rostral organ. This organ is believed to be a highly sensitive electroreceptor, capable of detecting the tiny electrical fields generated by the muscle contractions of other animals. In the dark, murky waters of its deep-sea habitat, where vision is of limited use, this electrosensory ability is crucial for detecting prey. The coelacanth is a drift hunter, a patient predator that floats almost motionless in the water, using its rostral organ to sense the approach of small fish and cephalopods, and then striking with a quick, powerful snap of its jaws. Its diet consists primarily of fish, squid, and other invertebrates that share its deep reef habitat. The coelacanth is not a fast, agile pursuit predator, but rather an ambush hunter that relies on stealth and surprise. Its life history is equally slow and deliberate, reflecting the low-energy environment in which it lives. They are thought to be extremely long-lived, with some estimates suggesting they can live for up to 100 years or more. Their reproductive cycle is also exceptionally slow, with some researchers estimating a gestation period that could last as long as 40 months, or even longer, making it one of the longest gestation periods of any animal. The coelacanth gives birth to live young, with females retaining the fertilized eggs inside their bodies until the offspring are fully developed. A single litter can contain several pups, each of which is born at a relatively large size, ready to fend for itself in the deep. This low reproductive rate makes the coelacanth particularly vulnerable to any threat, as populations cannot quickly recover from losses. The discovery of these two living species has transformed the coelacanth from a fossil curiosity into a living symbol of evolutionary resilience, a creature that has witnessed the rise and fall of countless other lineages. Yet, the more we learn about the coelacanth, the more we realize how much remains unknown. The deep caves they inhabit are difficult to explore, and their slow, gentle lifestyle makes them hard to observe in their natural environment. The genetic differences between the two living species, Latimeria shalomni and Latimeria manedoensis, suggest they have been separated for millions of years, yet they are remarkably similar in their overall appearance and biology. This is a testament to the stability of their body plan, a design that has proven successful for over 400 million years. The coelacanth is a living link to a distant past, a swimmer from a time before the dinosaurs, and its existence challenges our understanding of extinction and survival. The initial discovery in 1938 was a single, improbable event, a fish from the deep that surfaced in the hands of a curious curator. The 14-year gap before the second specimen was found in the Comoros was a period of intense scientific pursuit, driven by the need to understand this extraordinary animal. The discovery of the Indonesian species in 1999 expanded the story, revealing that the coelacanth's reign was not confined to one small corner of the ocean. These fish have persisted through continental drift, massive volcanic eruptions, and the asteroid impact that ended the age of dinosaurs, all while remaining true to their ancient form. As we drift through the quiet waters of their world, we can only marvel at their ability to endure, to remain unchanged while the world above them has transformed so completely. The coelacanth is a testament to the power of a successful design, a blueprint for survival that has stood the test of deep time. The hollow spine, the hinged skull, the lobed fins, and the electroreceptive snout are all features that were perfected hundreds of millions of years ago and have been carried forward ever since. It is a fish that seems to exist outside of time, a relic from the dawn of vertebrate evolution that still patrols the silent, dark slopes of the deep ocean. The hunt for these fish is a story of persistence and luck, of a young woman's curiosity and a scientist's obsession. Marjorie Courtney Latimer's decision to preserve the first specimen, despite its size and the lack of proper facilities, was a crucial act of foresight. J.L.B. Smith's relentless search for a second fish, driven by the need to confirm his identification and understand the species' range, was a scientific quest that lasted for over a decade, and the accidental discovery of the Indonesian coelacanth by a vacationing biologist shows that even in the modern age, the ocean still holds secrets waiting to be found. Each new discovery about the coelacanth raises new questions about its biology, its behavior, and its evolutionary history. How do the two living species interact with their respective environments? What is the exact nature of their reproductive cycle, and how do they find mates in the vast darkness of the deep? What other ancient lineages might still be lurking in the unexplored depths of our planet's oceans? The coelacanth is a reminder that our understanding of life on Earth is far from complete, and that the deep sea, in particular, remains one of the last great frontiers of biological exploration. The fish that was once a ghost of the past has become a guide to the unknown, a living question mark in the vast expanse of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. The coelacanth's slow, deliberate movements are a perfect match for the tranquil environment it calls home. It is a master of energy conservation, spending its days drifting in the cool, dark waters of deep caves, emerging only at night to feed. Its large, expressive eyes are adapted to low light, and its rostral organ provides a sense that we can barely comprehend. It is a creature of a different sensory world, one where electrical fields and pressure changes are more important than light and color. As we observe this fish, we are witnessing a way of being that is utterly alien to our own, a life that has evolved in the absence of the sun's rays. The story of the coelacanth is not just a story of a single species, but of an entire lineage that has survived for over 400 million years. It is a story of resilience, adaptation, and the sheer power of a successful evolutionary design. While the dinosaurs came and went, while mammals rose to dominance, while humans built civilizations, the coelacanth has remained, swimming in the deep, unchanged in its essential form. It is a living fossil in the truest sense, a direct connection to a world that existed long before our own. The silent, slow-motion ballet of the coelacanth in its deep-sea cave is a performance that has been running for eons, and it shows no signs of ending soon. The scientific community has learned an immense amount from the coelacanth, from its anatomy to its genetics. Studies of its genome have revealed that it is a slow-evolving species with a genetic makeup that has changed very little over millions of years. This has made it an invaluable resource for understanding the evolution of all vertebrates, including ourselves. By studying the coelacanth, scientists can gain insights into the genetic changes that allowed our own ancestors to make the transition from water to land. The fish's lobed fins, which are homologous to our own arms and legs, provide a living example of the kind of limb that was the precursor to the tetrapod limb. Yet, despite all this scientific attention, the coelacanth remains a profoundly mysterious animal. Its population size is unknown, and its behavior in the wild is difficult to study. The depths at which it lives, often over 200 meters below the surface, make direct observation challenging. It is a fish that is more often encountered by accident than by design, appearing in the nets of deep-sea fishermen or washing ashore after a storm. Each encounter is a rare opportunity to learn more, but also a reminder of how little we truly know about the life of this ancient fish. The coelacanth is a guardian of the deep, a silent sentinel that has watched over the ocean for hundreds of millions of years. Its continued existence is a testament to the enduring power of life, and a reminder that the greatest discoveries may still lie hidden in the unexplored corners of our world. As we prepare to drift into sleep, we carry with us the image of this magnificent creature, a ghost from the age of dinosaurs, still gliding through the silent, dark waters of the deep, a living dream from a time before time. The story of its survival is a quiet epic, one that continues to unfold in the darkness, waiting for the next chapter to be written by a curious eye or a lucky catch, a story that is far from over. The physical form of the coelacanth is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, a design that has proven so effective that it has remained largely unchanged for over 400 million years. Its most distinctive feature is the pair of lobed, fleshy fins that extend from its body like rudimentary limbs, supported by a central bone structure that mirrors the arrangement found in the limbs of terrestrial vertebrates. These fins are not used for propulsion in the way a typical fish uses its tail, but rather for a slow, deliberate rowing motion that allows the coelacanth to navigate the rocky ledges and caves of its deep habitat with remarkable precision. This unique method of movement, known as labriform swimming, is a testament to the fish's adaptation to a life of low-energy cruising rather than rapid pursuit. The coelacanth's body is covered in thick, bony scales that are unlike those of any other living fish, resembling a suit of armor that has been polished to a dull sheen. These scales are not merely protective, they are also a rich source of scientific information, containing growth rings that can be analyzed to determine the fish's age, much like the rings of a tree. Studies of these rings have revealed that the coelacanth is an exceptionally slow-growing and long-lived species, with some individuals estimated to reach over 100 years of age. This longevity is complemented by a remarkably slow reproductive cycle, with females carrying their young for a gestation period that may last over a year, a duration that is among the longest known for any fish. The internal anatomy of the coelacanth is a living museum of ancient features, offering a rare glimpse into the evolutionary transition from fish to land-dwelling vertebrates. Its skull is divided into two distinct parts, hinged at the middle, which allows the fish to open its mouth extraordinarily wide to capture prey in a single, swift gulp. This intracranial joint is a feature shared with its ancient ancestors but lost in almost all modern bony fishes, making the coelacanth a unique biological relic. Furthermore, the coelacanth possesses a specialized organ called a rostral organ, located in its snout, which is believed to be an electroreceptor used to detect the faint electrical fields emitted by other animals in the dark waters. This sensory adaptation is crucial for hunting in an environment where visibility is almost zero, allowing the fish to sense the presence of prey or predators without the use of sight. The coelacanth's circulatory system also holds a remarkable secret, a unique adaptation that sets it apart from nearly all other fish. Instead of a simple two-chambered heart, the coelacanth possesses a vestigial but functional conus arteriosus, a structure that acts as an additional pumping chamber, creating a more powerful and efficient flow of blood. This feature, along with a thick-walled and highly muscular heart, is thought to be an adaptation to the high pressure and low oxygen levels of its deep-sea environment. The fish also has a fatty, oil-filled swim bladder that is not used for buoyancy in the typical manner, but rather serves as a reserve of energy, a storehouse of lipids that can be drawn upon during periods of fasting or when migrating to deeper waters. This unusual use of the swim bladder is another indicator of the coelacanth's unique evolutionary path, a path that has diverged from the main line of fish evolution for hundreds of millions of years. The coelacanth's diet is as enigmatic as its lifestyle, with observations of feeding behavior being extremely rare due to the depths at which it lives. From the contents of the stomachs of captured specimens, scientists have pieced together a picture of a generalist predator that feeds on a variety of bottom-dwelling creatures. Its prey includes small fish, cephalopods such as cuttlefish and squid, and a range of crustaceans that scuttle across the seafloor. The coelacanth's hunting strategy likely involves slow, patient stalking, relying on its electroreception to pinpoint the location of a meal before striking with a sudden, powerful lunge. The hinged skull allows for a massive gape, enabling the fish to swallow prey that is surprisingly large relative to its own body size. A strategy that maximizes energy gain from a single capture in a food-scarce environment. The reproductive biology of the coelacanth is another area where its ancient nature is clearly evident, as it is a live-bearing species, a trait that is relatively rare among fish. The female coelacanth does not lay eggs that hatch externally, but instead retains the fertilized eggs within her body, where the developing embryos are nourished by a yolk sac. This process, known as ovoviviparity, results in the birth of fully formed miniature coelacanths that are immediately capable of independent life. The gestation period is believed to be exceptionally long, potentially lasting for more than a year, and the litter size is relatively small, typically consisting of only a few dozen pups. This slow and low-yield reproductive strategy makes the coelacanth particularly vulnerable to any threat, as the population cannot quickly recover from losses. The discovery of the coelacanth in 1938 sent shockwaves through the scientific community, as it was a creature that had been believed to have gone extinct with the dinosaurs some 65 million years earlier. The initial specimen, caught off the coast of South Africa, was a female that measured over 5 feet in length and was identified by a local museum curator who recognized its extraordinary significance. This single fish, which was initially thought to be a strange rock or a piece of driftwood, became an international sensation, sparking a global search for more specimens and a fierce debate about the origins of tetrapods. The second specimen, caught 14 years later in the Comoros Islands, confirmed that the coelacanth was not a lone freak, but a member of a living population, a population that had somehow survived in the deep ocean while its relatives perished. The modern coelacanth is not a single species, but two, with the second species being discovered in the waters of Indonesia in 1997, a finding that further expanded the known range of this ancient lineage. The Indonesian coelacanth, known as Latimeria menadoensis, is distinguished from its African relative by its brownish coloration and its slightly different genetic makeup, indicating a long period of isolation between the two populations. The exact population size of either species is unknown, but they are considered to be critically endangered, with only a few hundred individuals estimated to exist in each location. The coelacanth's preference for deep rocky slopes and caves makes it difficult to survey, and the accidental capture of individuals by deep-sea fishermen remains a significant threat to their survival. The coelacanth's genome has been sequenced, revealing a treasure trove of genetic information that has reshaped our understanding of vertebrate evolution. The genome is large and contains many genes that have been lost or modified in other fish, including genes that are involved in limb development and the formation of the immune system. This genetic data has confirmed the coelacanth's position as a close relative of the ancestors of all tetrapods, the four-limbed animals that include amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. The study of the coelacanth's genes is providing insights into the molecular changes that allowed ancient fish to colonize the land, a pivotal event in the history of life on Earth. The coelacanth's slow metabolism is a key to its survival, allowing it to thrive on a meager diet and in the cold, dark waters of its deep habitat. Its metabolic rate is among the lowest recorded for any fish, meaning that it requires very little energy to sustain its bodily functions. This low energy demand is reflected in its slow swimming speed and its sedentary lifestyle, with individuals often remaining in the same cave or crevice for extended periods of time. It is a strategy of conservation, a way of life that has allowed the coelacanth to outlast the dinosaurs, the ice ages, and countless other environmental upheavals that have shaped the planet. The coelacanth's eyes are adapted for life in the dim light of the deep sea, with large lenses and a high concentration of rod cells that are sensitive to low levels of light. The eyes also contain a reflective layer, known as a tapetum lucidum, which reflects light back through the retina, increasing the sensitivity of the eye in dark conditions. This adaptation is common in nocturnal animals, but it is a rare feature among fish, and it helps the coelacanth to see the faint silhouettes of prey against the dim glow of the water above. The coelacanth's vision is not its primary sense, however, as it relies more heavily on its electroreception and its sense of smell to navigate and find food in its lightless world. The coelacanth's fins are not just for swimming. They are also highly sensitive organs that can detect vibrations and pressure changes in the water. The fins are richly innervated with sensory receptors, and they are used to probe the seafloor and the walls of caves, allowing the fish to explore its environment through touch. This tactile ability is particularly important in the dark, where visual cues are limited, and it allows the coelacanth to move with confidence through its complex rocky habitat. The coelacanth is a fish of many senses, a creature that has mastered the art of survival in an environment that is alien to most other forms of life. The coelacanth's presence in the deep ocean is a reminder that the Earth is still a place of mystery, a world where ancient life can persist in hidden corners, untouched by the passage of time. It is a living fossil, a term that is often used but rarely as accurate as it is in this case, a species that has remained virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. The coelacanth's story is one of resilience, patience, and adaptation, a story that continues to unfold in the quiet depths of the sea. As we drift towards sleep, we can find peace in the knowledge that such a creature exists, a silent guardian of the deep, a testament to the enduring power of life in the face of a changing world. The story of the Nautilus begins not in the age of the dinosaurs, but in the ancient seas of the Cambrian period, over 500 million years ago. It was during this remote epoch that the first nautiloids, the distant ancestors of the modern chambered nautilus, emerged as the supreme predators of the primordial ocean. These early cephalopods, with their straight or gently curved conical shells, represented a revolutionary leap in evolutionary design, introducing the first sophisticated swimming capability to the marine world. Their reign was so successful that they dominated the world's oceans for hundreds of millions of years, long before the first dinosaur ever walked the Earth. By the time the first dinosaurs appeared roughly 230 million years ago, the nautiloid lineage was already an ancient and venerable group, having existed for some 270 million years prior to their arrival. The lineage that would eventually give rise to the modern nautilus has persisted through every major extinction event in Earth's history, a testament to its incredibly successful and stable body plan. While the dinosaurs came and went, vanishing in a cosmic catastrophe 66 million years ago, the nautilus endured, a silent witness to the rise of mammals, birds, and ultimately, humanity. This remarkable survival is not due to any extraordinary intelligence or speed, but rather to a profoundly efficient and conservative design that has required little modification over the eons. The Nautilus is a living testament to the power of a successful evolutionary formula, a creature that found its perfect niche in the deep ocean and has never needed to abandon it. To look upon a nautilus is to look back through a window into a world that existed before the continents took their current shapes. The most defining feature of the nautilus, the one that sets it apart from every other living cephalopod, is its magnificent external shell. This shell is not merely a protective covering. It is a sophisticated piece of biological engineering that functions as both a fortress and a buoyancy device. The shell is composed of a series of sealed chambers, a structure known as the phragmocone, which the animal builds progressively as it grows, adding new, larger chambers to the opening of the spiral. The animal itself lives in the largest outermost chamber, while the older inner chambers are gradually vacated and sealed off from the living tissue. This intricate architecture is the key to the nautilus's ability to control its position in the water column with remarkable precision. The secret to the nautilus's buoyancy lies in the careful management of gas and liquid within these sealed chambers. As the animal grows and builds a new chamber, it secretes a fluid into it, which is then slowly drawn out through a specialized strand of tissue known as the siphuncle. This siphuncle runs through all the chambers of the shell, acting as a biological pump that removes water and allows gas to diffuse in, creating a near-vacuum space. By precisely controlling the ratio of gas to liquid in its chambers, the nautilus can achieve neutral buoyancy, allowing it to hover effortlessly in the water with minimal energy expenditure. This system is so effective that it has remained essentially unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, a perfect solution to the problem of life in the three-dimensional ocean. To move through the water, the nautilus employs a simple yet effective form of jet propulsion, a method shared by its more agile relatives like squid and octopus. Water is drawn into the mantle cavity and then forcefully expelled through a muscular tube called the hyponome, or funnel. This jet of water propels the animal in the opposite direction, allowing it to move backward with surprising speed when necessary. However, unlike the fast-moving squid, the nautilus is not built for high-speed chases. Its jet propulsion is more of a leisurely and energy-efficient means of travel, perfectly suited for its life of slow cruising along the deep reef slopes. When it needs to make a quick escape or capture prey, it can produce a more powerful jet, but for the most part, its movements are deliberate and calm. The hunting and sensory apparatus of the nautilus is equally fascinating and reveals its ancient lineage. Projecting from its head are over 90 slender, flexible tentacles, a number far greater than that found in any other cephalopod. Unlike the tentacles of squid and octopus, which are equipped with powerful suction cups, the nautilus's tentacles are smooth and covered in sticky ridges or transverse folds. These ridges provide an excellent grip, allowing the animal to securely hold onto its prey, which consists mainly of small fish, crabs, and shrimp. The tentacles are also highly sensitive to chemical cues in the water, helping the nautilus to locate food in the dim, deep water environment it calls home. Perhaps the most remarkable and primitive feature of the nautilus is its eye, which represents a fascinating intermediate stage in the evolution of vision. The nautilus eye is a simple pinhole camera eye, lacking the complex lens found in the eyes of fish, birds, and other cephalopods. It is essentially a hollow sphere open to the sea through a small hole, through which light enters and projects an image onto a light-sensitive retina at the back. This design produces a sharp but dim image as the small aperture limits the amount of light that can enter. Despite its simplicity, this pinhole eye is perfectly adequate for the nautilus's lifestyle, allowing it to detect shapes, movement, and changes in light intensity in the murky depths where it lives. This pinhole eye is considered by scientists to be the simplest functioning eye of any large animal, a living example of an early evolutionary stage in visual development. It is a powerful reminder that evolution does not always strive for perfection, but rather for what is good enough for a particular way of life. The nautilus has thrived for hundreds of millions of years with this primitive visual system, proving that a sophisticated lens is not a prerequisite for survival in its specific ecological niche. The image it perceives is likely a blurry, shadowy world, but one that is rich in the information the nautilus needs to navigate, find food, and avoid predators. The very simplicity of this eye is a clue to its great antiquity, a feature that has been inherited from its distant ancestors and preserved through the ages. The life history of the nautilus is one of extreme patience and longevity. a strategy that stands in stark contrast to the fast-paced lives of its squid and octopus cousins. The nautilus grows at an exceptionally slow rate, taking approximately 15 years to reach sexual maturity. Its growth is marked by the successive addition of new chambers to its shell, each one a permanent record of its slow progress through life. This extended juvenile period is a significant investment, but it is part of a survival strategy that prioritizes longevity and repeated reproduction over a single, massive reproductive event. Once it reaches maturity, the nautilus can continue to live and reproduce for many more years, with some estimates suggesting a total lifespan of 20 years or more, and possibly exceeding that in the wild. This long lifespan is remarkable for a cephalopod, a group generally known for their short, explosive life cycles. While most squid and octopus live for only 1 or 2 years, dying shortly after spawning, the nautilus adopts a completely different approach. Its slow metabolism, energy-efficient locomotion, and deep-water habitat all contribute to its extended existence. This longevity also means that the nautilus has a very low reproductive rate, producing only a small number of large eggs at a time. This reproductive strategy, known as K-selection, is common in long-lived, stable environments. But it makes the nautilus particularly vulnerable to threats such as overcollection, as the population cannot quickly recover from losses. The fossil record of the nautilus and its relatives is a story of both extraordinary success and dramatic decline. The nautiloids were once the dominant cephalopods, and their diversity was immense, with thousands of species filling the world's oceans. Their close relatives, the ammonites, with their beautifully coiled and ornate shells, were also incredibly abundant and diverse. However, at the end of the Cretaceous period, the same extinction event that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs also dealt a devastating blow to the cephalopods. The ammonites, which had thrived for over 300 million years, vanished completely. The nautiloids, which had already been in decline, saw their numbers reduced dramatically, with approximately 95% of their diversity lost forever. Only a handful of nautiloid species survived this great extinction, clinging to existence in the deep, stable environments of the world's oceans. These survivors are the ancestors of the 6 or so nautilus species that exist today, a tiny remnant of a once mighty dynasty. The modern nautilus is thus a living fossil in the truest sense, a species that has outlived its more famous relatives and persisted in a world that has changed beyond recognition. Its continued existence is a remarkable story of resilience, but it is also a fragile one. The very traits that have allowed it to survive for so long, its slow growth and low reproductive rate, now make it vulnerable to a new and unprecedented threat: human activity. Today, the nautilus faces a new danger that its ancient lineage has never had to contend with: the pressure of commercial collection. For centuries, the beautiful spiral shells of the nautilus have been prized by collectors and used to create jewelry, ornaments, and decorative objects. The nautilus shell is a symbol of mathematical perfection and natural beauty, and its demand in the international shell trade has grown significantly in recent decades. This collection pressure, combined with the nautilus's slow growth and low reproduction, poses a serious threat to its populations. In many areas, nautiluses are now being harvested at a rate that they cannot sustain, and scientists are increasingly concerned about their long-term survival. The nautilus is also threatened by destructive fishing practices, such as trawling, which can damage the deep-sea habitats it depends on. While the nautilus can be found at depths of up to 600 meters or more, it must come to shallower waters to feed and breed, making it accessible to traps and nets. The combination of direct collection and habitat degradation has led to significant declines in nautilus populations in several parts of its range. Unlike many other marine species, the nautilus has no broad legal protection, and its trade is largely unregulated. The very creature that has survived for 500 million years is now facing the possibility of extinction, not from natural forces, but from the hands of humans. The nautilus is a creature of the deep, found in the warm tropical waters of the Indo-Pacific region, from the coasts of Indonesia and the Philippines to the islands of Fiji and Australia. It lives on the steep slopes of coral reefs, generally at depths of 200 to 600 meters, a twilight zone where sunlight is faint and pressure is immense. By day, the nautilus remains in these deeper waters, hiding from predators and conserving its energy in the cool, stable environment. But as night falls, it undertakes a remarkable vertical migration, rising to shallower depths of around 100 meters or less to feed. This nightly journey brings it into the reef environment, where it searches for food among the corals and rocks, using its sensitive tentacles to probe the crevices. This daily migration is a dangerous undertaking, as it brings the nautilus into the territory of its main predators, including sharks, sea turtles, and larger fish. The nautilus must rely on its shell for protection, and when threatened, it can withdraw its entire body inside, sealing the opening with a tough, leathery hood. This defensive posture makes it a difficult meal, as the shell is incredibly strong and resistant to crushing. This, combined with its camouflage and its ability to retreat to the depths, has allowed the nautilus to survive in a world full of predators. The deep water environment has been its sanctuary, a refuge from the intense competition and predation of the shallow seas. The genetic isolation of nautilus populations is another factor in their vulnerability, as they do not disperse widely as larvae. This means that populations in different locations are often genetically distinct and have limited ability to recolonize areas where they have been depleted. The loss of a local population is therefore a permanent loss of a unique genetic lineage. The nautilus is not a single, widespread species, but rather a complex of several distinct species, each with its own specific range and adaptations. Their future is uncertain, hanging in the balance between the deep history that has protected them for so long and the unprecedented pressures of the modern world. As the nautilus drifts through its dark, silent world, it carries with it the entire story of its lineage, a story that may be nearing its final chapter. The fate of this ancient mariner now lies in our hands, a responsibility we have only recently begun to understand. And as we watch this living fossil glide through the abyss, we are left to wonder if its 500 million year journey is about to come to an end, or if it will find a way to endure yet another challenge. The answer, hidden in the deep, silent waters of the Pacific, is a cliffhanger that only time will reveal. The currents that carry nautilus larvae are not random, but are shaped by the complex geography of the ocean floor and the rotation of the planet itself. These gentle flows can move young nautiluses for hundreds of miles, yet they are still bound by the vast, deep basins that separate one island chain from another. The result is a patchwork of isolated populations, each evolving in its own quiet way over millions of years. Scientists have identified at least 7 distinct species within the genus Nautilus, and genetic analysis continues to reveal subtle differences even between populations that appear nearly identical on the outside. This hidden diversity is a reminder that evolution does not stop for creatures we call living fossils. It simply proceeds at a pace that is difficult for human eyes to perceive. The shell of a nautilus is not merely a protective home, but a finely calibrated instrument that records the passage of time in its very structure. Each chamber is sealed off as the animal grows, and the gas within it is carefully regulated to control buoyancy. The nautilus can adjust its position in the water column by moving fluid in and out of these chambers through a tube called the siphuncle. This allows it to rise at night to feed on the reef slopes and to sink back into the cooler, darker depths during the day to avoid predators. The entire process is a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, honed over hundreds of millions of years of trial and error. The nautilus has no true eyes like those of fish or squid, but instead possesses a pair of simple pinhole eyes that are remarkably effective in the dim light of its habitat. These eyes cannot form sharp images, but they are exquisitely sensitive to changes in light intensity and movement. This is enough for the nautilus to detect the silhouette of a potential predator or the flicker of a passing prey item. The brain that processes this information is surprisingly large for an invertebrate, and recent studies have shown that nautiluses are capable of learning and memory. They can be trained to associate a specific light signal with a food reward, and they remember this association for weeks, a cognitive ability that rivals some vertebrates. The reproductive life of a nautilus is slow and deliberate, matching the unhurried pace of its existence. A female will lay only a handful of eggs at a time, each one encased in a tough, leathery shell that she attaches to a rocky crevice on the seafloor. These eggs take up to a year to hatch, and the young nautiluses that emerge are miniature copies of their parents, already equipped with a fully formed shell. They receive no parental care and must immediately fend for themselves in a world full of danger. This low reproductive rate is one of the reasons why nautilus populations are so vulnerable to overfishing, as removing even a few adults can have a dramatic impact on the next generation. The hunting strategy of the nautilus is one of patience and opportunism, rather than speed and aggression. It uses its many tentacles, which number around 90, to probe the crevices and cracks of the reef in search of small crustaceans and carrion. These tentacles are sticky and highly sensitive, allowing the nautilus to detect chemical traces of food in the water. Once it finds a meal, it uses its powerful beak to crush the shells of its prey, a beak that is surprisingly strong for an animal that spends most of its time drifting. This diet of scavenged and hunted food places the nautilus in a unique ecological niche, one that it has occupied since the time of the dinosaurs. The nautilus is a creature of the twilight zone, a habitat that lies between the sunlit surface and the pitch-black abyss. It is most commonly found at depths of 100 to 500 meters, where the water is cool and the light is faint. Here, the pressure is immense, often exceeding 40 atmospheres, yet the nautilus is perfectly adapted to withstand it. Its shell is reinforced with internal structures that distribute the pressure evenly, and its body fluids contain special compounds that prevent the formation of gas bubbles. This allows the nautilus to move freely between depths, a flexibility that is rare among shelled cephalopods. The evolutionary history of the nautilus is written in the fossil record, which is one of the most complete and continuous of any animal group. The earliest nautiloids appeared in the Cambrian period over 500 million years ago, and they were among the dominant predators of the ancient seas. Over time, they diversified into thousands of species, with shells of every imaginable shape and size. Some were straight, some were coiled, and some were even shaped like a spiral. The nautilus we see today is the last surviving descendant of this once mighty lineage, a living remnant of a world that has long since vanished. The decline of the nautilus began not with the dinosaurs, but with the rise of fish, which were faster, more agile, and better equipped to compete for food. As fish became more numerous and diverse, the nautiloids gradually lost their dominance, retreating to deeper and more remote waters. The mass extinction that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago also took a heavy toll on the nautiloids, wiping out all but a few species. Among these survivors was the ancestor of the modern nautilus, which found refuge in the deep, stable waters of the Indo-Pacific. There it has remained, largely unchanged for the past 65 million years. The threats that face the nautilus today are entirely new in its long history, and they come not from natural predators, but from humans. The nautilus shell is prized for its beauty, and it has been harvested for centuries for use in jewelry, decorative objects, and even as a symbol of mathematical perfection. In recent decades, the demand for nautilus shells has increased dramatically, driven by the global trade in exotic goods. This has led to overfishing in many areas, and some populations have declined by as much as 80% in just a few years. The nautilus is now protected under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, but enforcement is difficult and the trade continues. The slow growth and late maturity of the nautilus make it particularly vulnerable to this kind of pressure. It takes a nautilus up to 15 years to reach sexual maturity, and even then, it may only reproduce once every few years. This means that a population that has been heavily fished can take decades to recover, if it recovers at all. The removal of large old individuals is especially damaging, as these are often the most successful breeders. The loss of these animals from the gene pool can have lasting effects on the genetic health of the population, reducing its ability to adapt to future changes. The deep-sea environment of the nautilus is also being affected by human activities in ways that are only beginning to be understood. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, is making it harder for shelled animals to build their calcium carbonate structures. The nautilus may be more resilient than some species, as it lives in deeper, cooler waters where the effects of acidification are less pronounced. However, the long-term consequences of a changing ocean are uncertain, and the nautilus may face challenges that its ancient lineage has never encountered before. Conservation efforts for the nautilus are still in their infancy, but there are signs of hope. Marine protected areas have been established in some parts of the nautilus range, and researchers are working to better understand the species' distribution and population dynamics. Tagging studies have revealed that nautiluses have relatively small home ranges, and that they are remarkably faithful to the same reef or seamount for years at a time. This means that protecting a specific area can be an effective way to safeguard a local population. However, the vastness of the ocean and the remoteness of nautilus habitats make such protection difficult to implement and monitor. The nautilus is a symbol of resilience and continuity, a living link to a time when the oceans were ruled by creatures that now exist only as fossils. Its presence in the deep sea is a reminder that evolution is not always about progress, but also about persistence. The nautilus has survived every major extinction event that has occurred in the past 500 million years, from the snowball Earth of the Cryogenian to the asteroid impact that ended the age of dinosaurs. Yet it now faces a challenge that is unlike any it has faced before, a challenge created by a single species that has spread across the entire globe. As we continue to explore the deep ocean, we are discovering that it is not a barren wasteland, but a vibrant and diverse ecosystem, full of life that is still largely unknown. The nautilus is one of the most charismatic inhabitants of this realm, a creature that captures the imagination and inspires wonder. Its spiral shell has become a symbol of the golden ratio, a mathematical constant that appears throughout nature, from the arrangement of leaves on a stem to the shape of galaxies. To lose the nautilus would be to lose a piece of our own connection to the deep past, a connection that we are only beginning to appreciate. The future of the nautilus is not yet written, and there is still time to change its course. By supporting sustainable fishing practices, reducing our carbon footprint, and protecting the habitats where nautiluses live, we can help ensure that this ancient mariner continues its journey. The decisions we make in the coming decades will determine whether the nautilus remains a living fossil or becomes just another name on the long list of species that have been lost to the modern world. It is a responsibility that we carry, whether we realize it or not, as stewards of the oceans that cover most of our planet. The nautilus is a creature of patience, and it has taught us that survival is not always about speed or strength, but about adaptability and endurance. It has survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and the rise and fall of countless other species, all while drifting through the same dark waters that it inhabits today. Its story is a testament to the power of evolution to create forms that are both beautiful and functional, and to the resilience of life in the face of unimaginable change. As we watch a nautilus glide through the water, its shell catching the faint glow of a submersible's light, we are witnessing a piece of history that is still alive, still breathing, and still fighting to endure. In the silence of the deep sea, the nautilus moves with a grace that is almost hypnotic, its tentacles trailing behind it like the ribbons of an ancient dancer. It does not hurry, for it has no need to hurry, and it does not fear, for it has outlived every predator that has ever threatened it. It is a creature of the abyss, a ghost from a time before the continents took their current shapes, a messenger from a world that exists only in the deepest layers of our planet's memory. To see a nautilus is to see the ocean itself in all its mystery and majesty, and to be reminded of the vastness of time that stretches before and behind us. The nautilus does not possess the acute vision of a fish, nor does it rely on speed to capture its prey. Instead, its two large pinhole eyes, which lack lenses, are exquisitely tuned to detect changes in light and shadow, a perfect adaptation for a life spent mostly in the dim twilight zone of the ocean. These simple eyes can discern the silhouette of a crab or a shrimp against the faint glow of the surface, and they are equally adept at sensing the approach of a larger looming shape that might spell danger. When a meal is detected, the nautilus does not give chase in a frantic burst of energy, but rather employs a slow, deliberate approach, relying on stealth and patience to bring it within range of its many tentacles. There are up to 90 of these thin, flexible tentacles, and unlike those of its close relatives, the octopus and the squid, they are not equipped with suckers. Instead, they are covered in a sticky, adhesive substance that ensnares prey with surprising efficiency. Once a small crustacean or a piece of carrion is caught, the tentacles, which are divided into two distinct rings, work together to transport the food toward a sharp, parrot-like beak that is hidden deep within the center of the tentacle crown. This beak is made of a hard chitinous material and is powerful enough to crush the shells of small mollusks and the exoskeletons of crabs, making the nautilus a formidable, if unhurried, hunter of the deep. The process of feeding is a study in quiet efficiency, a stark contrast to the violent, rapid strikes of many modern cephalopods. The nautilus will extend its tentacles to their full length, creating a wide, sticky net that drifts gently in the water current. When a small animal brushes against this net, the tentacles immediately contract, pulling the struggling creature inward with a steady, irresistible force. The beak then goes to work, tearing the prey into manageable pieces before it is passed into the mouth and down the digestive tract. This method of feeding is so energy efficient that the nautilus can survive for weeks, and in some documented cases, months without a single meal, a crucial adaptation for an animal that lives in an environment where food can be scarce and widely scattered. This remarkable ability to endure long periods of starvation is supported by a slow metabolic rate that is among the lowest of any living cephalopod. The nautilus does not burn energy at the frantic pace of a squid, which must constantly move to stay alive, nor does it engage in the high-energy hunting strategies of an octopus. Instead, its entire physiology is geared toward conservation, from its unhurried movements to its infrequent breeding cycles. This slow pace of life is a direct reflection of its ancient lineage, a strategy that has proven successful for over 500 million years, long before the first fish swam in the oceans and long before the first dinosaurs walked on land. The shell itself is not merely a protective covering, but a sophisticated piece of living engineering that governs the nautilus's entire existence. It is a spiral, divided into a series of progressively larger chambers, and the animal itself lives only in the outermost largest chamber. The inner chambers are filled with gas, and by carefully controlling the ratio of gas to water within these chambers, the nautilus can achieve perfect neutral buoyancy. This means it can hover in the water column with almost no muscular effort, expending very little energy to remain at a desired depth. This mastery of buoyancy is achieved through a remarkable organ called the siphuncle, a thin, fleshy tube that runs through all the chambers and is responsible for either drawing water out of them or allowing it back in, a process that is both slow and precise. As the nautilus grows, it creates new, larger chambers at the opening of its shell, sealing off the older, smaller ones behind it. This continuous process of growth and sealing means that the shell of an adult nautilus is a perfect, living fossil record of its entire life. By examining the stable isotopes of oxygen within the calcium carbonate of each chamber, scientists can determine the water temperature at the time each chamber was formed, providing a detailed history of the animal's movements and the environmental conditions it experienced. These same techniques have been used on fossilized nautilus shells from the Paleozoic era, revealing that these ancient relatives lived in a much warmer global ocean than exists today, a testament to the adaptability of their basic body plan across immense spans of geological time. The shell's internal structure also provides a unique mechanism for defense against sudden changes in pressure. When a nautilus needs to descend to greater depths, it does not fight the increasing pressure, but rather allows water to slowly enter the chambers of its shell, increasing its overall density and causing it to sink. This process is not a rapid dive, but a slow, controlled descent that can take several hours. Conversely, to ascend, the nautilus must actively pump water out of its chambers, a process that requires significant energy and is also carried out slowly. This method of pressure regulation is so effective that the nautilus can withstand the crushing pressures found at depths of over 700 meters, though it typically prefers to stay within a more comfortable range of 150 to 400 meters during the day. The nautilus is a creature of vertical migration, following a daily rhythm that has remained unchanged for eons. As darkness falls over the ocean's surface, the nautilus begins its slow ascent from the deep, shadowy waters where it spends its days in relative safety. This nightly journey can take it to depths of less than 50 meters, where it forages along the seafloor for crabs, shrimp, and other small animals. As the first light of dawn begins to penetrate the water, the nautilus reverses its course, slowly sinking back into the darker, safer depths, where the pressure is higher, but the risk of predation from surface-dwelling hunters is significantly reduced. This daily migration is a delicate dance with light and pressure, a routine that has been performed by countless generations of nautiluses for hundreds of millions of years. During these nightly foraging expeditions, the nautilus relies heavily on its sense of smell to locate food in the dark, murky waters. Its olfactory capabilities are remarkably acute, allowing it to detect the faint chemical signature of a dead fish or a molted crab shell from a considerable distance. It will follow this scent trail with unwavering determination, its tentacles probing the seafloor, searching for the source of the tantalizing odor. This reliance on chemical cues rather than vision is another key adaptation to its deep-sea environment. where the absence of sunlight makes visual hunting largely ineffective. It is a method of finding food that is both ancient and highly successful, a strategy shared with many of the earliest ocean dwellers. The reproductive cycle of the nautilus is as slow and deliberate as every other aspect of its life. Unlike many of its cephalopod cousins, which reproduce once and then die in a dramatic and rapid fashion, the nautilus is a long-lived species that reproduces multiple times over its lifespan. A female nautilus will lay only a small number of large eggs, each one encased in a tough, leathery shell, and she will attach them to a hard surface, such as a rock or a coral outcrop, in a secluded crevice. The gestation period for these eggs is extraordinarily long, lasting anywhere from 9 to 15 months, a duration that is unique among cephalopods and reflects the slow, deliberate pace of the nautilus's entire existence. When the young nautilus finally hatches from its egg, it is a perfect miniature replica of its parents, already possessing a small, coiled shell with a few chambers. It does not undergo a larval stage, as many other marine invertebrates do, but emerges as a fully formed, albeit tiny, adult. From this moment on, it is entirely independent and must immediately begin the slow process of growth and survival in the vast, unforgiving ocean. The young nautilus will continue to add new chambers to its shell for the next 10 to 15 years, gradually reaching sexual maturity and the full size of its species. It is a long and patient journey, and the mortality rate for these young nautiluses is high, as they are vulnerable to a wide range of predators, including fish, eels, and even other larger cephalopods. The nautilus's survival strategy is not one of brute force or speed, but of patience, efficiency, and a profound ability to simply outlast its challenges. It has survived the great extinction events that wiped out the dinosaurs, the ammonites, and countless other marine lineages, not by being the most powerful or the most aggressive, but by being the most adaptable in its own quiet way. Its preference for deep, stable environments has sheltered it from the most violent changes in surface conditions, and its low metabolic rate has allowed it to survive on very little food when resources are scarce. It is a living embodiment of the principle that sometimes the most successful strategy is simply to be patient and to endure. This endurance is made all the more remarkable by the fact that the nautilus is a relatively solitary creature, showing no signs of complex social behavior or group hunting. It lives a largely solitary existence, coming together with others of its kind only for the purpose of reproduction. This lack of social structure means that its survival does not depend on the cohesion of a group, but solely on the individual's ability to find food, avoid predators, and navigate the complexities of its deep-sea environment. This self-reliance is a hallmark of its ancient lineage, a trait that has served it well for hundreds of millions of years, proving that a solitary, unhurried existence can be just as successful as a more social and dynamic one. The deep-sea environment that the nautilus calls home is one of the most stable and unchanging habitats on Earth. The temperature at these depths is remarkably constant, varying by only a few degrees throughout the year, and the salt content of the water is equally stable. This environmental consistency has likely played a crucial role in the nautilus's remarkable evolutionary stasis. With little external pressure to change, the nautilus has had no need to evolve rapidly, and its basic body plan has remained essentially unchanged for over 500 million years. It is a living snapshot of a bygone era, a testament to the power of a stable environment to preserve life in a form that has long since disappeared from the more dynamic, shallower waters of the world. The nautilus's tentacles, while lacking the suckers of other cephalopods, are more numerous and are covered in a sticky, ridged surface that is incredibly effective for gripping slippery prey. These tentacles can be retracted entirely into the shell, and a tough, leathery hood can be pulled over the opening, providing a watertight seal that protects the animal from harm. This ability to completely seal itself within its shell is a powerful defense mechanism, making it nearly invulnerable to most predators. A fish or an eel that attempts to attack a sealed nautilus will find only a smooth, hard, impenetrable surface, and it will quickly abandon the attempt in search of easier prey. This defensive strategy is another ancient adaptation that has proven its worth time and time again over the eons. As the nautilus moves through the water, it does not use its tentacles for propulsion but relies on a simple, jet-like mechanism. Water is drawn into the mantle cavity and then forcefully expelled through a muscular tube called the hyponome. This creates a gentle, pulsating thrust that propels the animal backward, a method of locomotion that is as old as the cephalopod lineage itself. By precisely controlling the direction of the hyponome, the nautilus can steer with surprising agility, moving up, down, and sideways with equal ease. This form of jet propulsion is not the rapid, powerful bursts of a squid, but rather a slow, steady, and controlled form of movement that perfectly matches its energy-efficient lifestyle. The shell of the nautilus is not just a home and a defense, it is also a work of natural art. Its surface is often covered in striking patterns of brown, orange, and white stripes, a coloration that provides excellent camouflage among the coral and rocky outcrops of its preferred habitat. The shell's interior is a shimmering layer of mother of pearl, also known as nacre, which is both beautiful and structurally strong. This inner layer is composed of microscopic crystals of aragonite, arranged in a brick-and-mortar pattern that gives the shell its incredible toughness. This same material has been used by humans for centuries to create jewelry and decorative objects, a testament to the enduring appeal of the nautilus's design. The study of the nautilus has provided scientists with invaluable insights into the evolution of the entire cephalopod group, which includes not only the nautilus, but also the octopus, squid, and cuttlefish. By comparing the relatively simple nervous system and sensory organs of the nautilus with the highly complex brains of its more derived relatives, researchers can trace the evolutionary steps that led to the intelligence and sophisticated behaviors seen in modern cephalopods. The nautilus represents a crucial early branch on this evolutionary tree, a living link to the ancestral forms that gave rise to some of the most fascinating and intelligent creatures in the ocean. Its presence in the modern world is a scientific treasure, a window into the deep past that allows us to understand the origins of a truly remarkable family of animals. Despite its long and successful history, the nautilus now faces a new and unprecedented threat, not from natural predators, but from human activity. The beautiful spiraled shell of the nautilus has made it a highly sought-after commodity in the shell trade, and it is harvested in large numbers for sale to collectors and tourists. This over-harvesting, combined with the nautilus's extremely slow growth rate and low reproductive output, has led to significant population declines in many areas. The nautilus is not a creature that can quickly recover from overexploitation. Its long generation time and low fecundity make it particularly vulnerable to any increase in mortality. Conservation efforts are now underway in several nations to protect this ancient animal, but the challenges are significant, as the nautilus's deep water habitat makes it difficult to study and to monitor. The plight of the nautilus is a poignant reminder that even the most successful and resilient life forms on Earth are not immune to the impacts of human activity. This creature, which has survived asteroid impacts, ice ages, and the rise and fall of entire dynasties of marine life, now finds itself threatened by a species that has only existed for a tiny fraction of its own evolutionary history. The same adaptability that allowed the nautilus to endure for millions of years is now being tested in ways it has never faced before. The future of this living fossil rests not on its own ancient survival strategies, but on the choices that we, as a species, make in the coming decades. To lose the nautilus would be to lose a unique and irreplaceable chapter in the story of life on Earth, a silent testament to the deep time of our planet's oceans. In the quiet, dark waters where it has always lived, the nautilus continues its slow, deliberate journey, unaware of the distant human world that now casts a shadow over its existence. It still rises with the night and sinks with the dawn, still hunts with its sticky tentacles, and still grows its perfect spiral shell, chamber by chamber. Its story is far from over, but its next chapter is being written by forces far beyond the control of this ancient mariner. The nautilus is a symbol of endurance, a reminder of the vastness of geological time, and a living question about the future of our own tenure on this planet. As it drifts through the silent abyss, it carries with it the weight of 500 million years of history, a history that is still unfolding, one slow, graceful movement at a time. The moon pulls at the ocean's skin, and on the shores of the Atlantic, a creature older than the trees begins its ancient ritual. The horseshoe crab, Limulus polyphemus, emerges from the depths where it has spent the winter, its domed carapace cutting a furrow in the wet sand. This is a pilgrimage that has occurred for 450 million years, long before the first dinosaur walked the earth, and long before the first flower bloomed. Their lineage stretches back to a time when the continents were a single, silent landmass. and the seas were ruled by creatures that now exist only in stone. These are not true crabs, but arthropods more closely related to spiders and scorpions, a distinction that matters to their biology and their ancient design. Their bodies are composed of three distinct parts: the prosoma, the opisthosoma, and the telson, the long, spiked tail that they use not for defense, but to right themselves when waves turn them over. The hard chitinous shell is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, a shield that has remained largely unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. They are living fossils in the truest sense, a direct window into the Paleozoic era that persists in the modern world. Their sensory world is far richer than our own, built upon a complex array of 10 eyes. 2 large lateral compound eyes are the most prominent, each composed of about 1,000 tiny light-sensitive units called ommatidia, which allow them to detect movement and shapes in the murky water. But their vision extends far beyond these primary organs, with a pair of simple median eyes on the front of the shell and several other photoreceptors scattered across their body, including some on their tail. Most remarkably, some of these eyes are sensitive to ultraviolet light, a spectrum invisible to humans, which may help them navigate and find mates in the shallow, turbid waters of the intertidal zone. The most extraordinary aspect of the horseshoe crab, however, is not its vision, but the very fluid that courses through its veins. Their blood is a vivid milky blue, a color that arises from the presence of hemocyanin, a copper-based molecule that transports oxygen through the body, much as iron-based hemoglobin does in our own blood. This blue blood holds a secret that has saved countless human lives, a primitive immune system that is exquisitely sensitive to bacterial contamination. When a gram-negative bacterium is present, the blood coagulates into a gel, a reaction that forms the basis of the LAL test, or limulus amebocyte lysate test. This test is a cornerstone of modern medicine, used to ensure that every injectable drug, vaccine, and medical implant is free of dangerous bacterial toxins. The pharmaceutical industry harvests horseshoe crabs, drains a portion of their blood, and returns them to the sea, a process that, while often survivable, takes a toll on the population. The value of their blood is measured in thousands of dollars per quart, a testament to the irreplaceable role this ancient creature plays in protecting human health. Every time a person receives a vaccine, they are indirectly connected to this 450-million-year-old animal and its extraordinary biological defense system. When the spring tides are at their highest, the horseshoe crabs come ashore in great numbers, a spectacle that repeats along the Atlantic coast of North America, from the Yucatan Peninsula to Maine. The females arrive first, heavy with eggs, and the males cling to their backs, forming a living chain as they ride the waves to the high tide line. Here, the female digs a nest in the sand and deposits thousands of small green eggs, which the male fertilizes as they are laid. This mass spawning event is a vital part of the coastal ecosystem, providing a feast for migratory shorebirds like the red knot, which time their own long journeys to coincide with this abundance of food. The eggs themselves are a powerful symbol of resilience, buried in the warm sand where they will develop over several weeks before hatching into tiny, trilobite-like larvae. These young crabs will then spend their first years in the shallows, molting their shells as they grow, before venturing into deeper waters. They will spend a decade or more reaching maturity, and a single individual can live for 20 years or more, a long and patient existence that mirrors the slow pace of their evolutionary history. They are a species that has weathered ice ages, asteroid impacts, and the rise and fall of countless other life forms, and they continue their patient walk on the shores of a changing world. Far below the sunlit surface, where the last rays of light fade into an eternal twilight, a different kind of ancient survivor moves with a slow, deliberate grace. The giant isopod, Bathynomus giganteus, is a crustacean that looks like a colossal woodlouse, a relative of the pillbugs found in damp gardens, but scaled up to a monstrous size. While its terrestrial cousins measure barely a centimeter, this deep-sea dweller can reach lengths of up to 50 centimeters and weigh nearly 2 kilograms, a true giant of the abyssal plains. Its lineage extends back 160 million years, to a time when dinosaurs still dominated the land, and it has found a successful formula in the cold, dark, and high-pressure world of the deep. These creatures inhabit the ocean floor at depths ranging from 170 to over 2,500 meters, where the water temperature hovers just above freezing, and the pressure would crush any air-breathing animal. They are scavengers. the cleanup crew of the abyss, patrolling the muddy bottom in search of any organic matter that falls from the sunlit waters above. Their diet consists of the carcasses of fish, whales, and squid, as well as any other detritus that drifts down from the surface, a rare and unpredictable source of food in this vast, empty environment. They are equipped with powerful mandibles and 4 sets of jaws, capable of tearing through the tough flesh and bone of a decaying corpse. Their most remarkable adaptation is their ability to fast for incredibly long periods of time, a necessity in a world where a meal might only appear once every few years. In laboratory settings, a giant isopod has been known to survive without food for over 5 years, slowing its metabolism to a near standstill and living off the fat reserves stored in its body. They can also enter a state of torpor, becoming almost completely inactive to conserve precious energy until the next feast arrives. This incredible endurance is a testament to the harsh realities of their deep-sea home, where survival is measured not in days or weeks, but in years of patient waiting. Respiration for the giant isopod is carried out by a set of specialized appendages called pleopods, which are located on the underside of its abdomen. These leaf-like structures function as gills, extracting dissolved oxygen from the water as it flows over them, a system that is both efficient and perfectly suited to their oxygen-rich cold water environment. The pleopods also serve a second purpose in some species, acting as a kind of brood pouch where the female carries her developing eggs and young, protecting them from the harsh conditions of the deep. This dual function of respiration and parental care is a remarkable example of evolutionary economy. The sheer size of the giant isopod presents a fascinating biological paradox, known as abyssal gigantism. In the deep sea, where food is scarce and energy is precious, one might expect animals to evolve to be smaller, requiring less sustenance to survive. Yet, many deep-sea creatures, including the giant isopod, the giant squid, and the Japanese spider crab, have evolved to be significantly larger than their shallow-water relatives. One theory suggests that the larger body size helps them to withstand the immense pressure of the deep, while another proposes that it allows them to travel greater distances in search of sporadic food sources. A larger body may also simply be a consequence of slower growth rates and longer lifespans in the cold, stable environment of the abyss. When a large food fall, such as a whale carcass, reaches the seafloor, the giant isopods gather in numbers, a rare and violent feast in the perpetual gloom. They will gorge themselves to the point of immobility, their bodies swelling with food, unable to move for days as they digest their meal. This feast or famine lifestyle dictates every aspect of their existence, from their slow metabolism to their patient, methodical movement across the seabed. They are a living demonstration of the fact that life finds a way to thrive even in the most extreme and unforgiving environments on our planet. A silent, armored relic from the age of reptiles that still patrols the abyssal dark. In the cold, deep waters off the coasts of Japan and New Zealand, a creature so strange it was once thought to be a myth patrols the depths. The frilled shark, Chlamydocelicus anguineus, is a living fossil whose lineage can be traced back 80 million years to the Cretaceous period, when the last dinosaurs still roamed the earth. With its long, eel-like body and a mouth filled with terrifying, needle-sharp teeth, it is a creature that seems to have been pulled directly from the pages of a prehistoric bestiary. It is a shark, yet it defies almost every common conception of what a shark should be, with a body more suited to a serpent than a swift predator. The most distinctive feature of the frilled shark is its jaw, which is not fused to its skull in the way of most modern sharks, but is instead attached at the back of the head. This ancient terminal mouth is positioned at the very front of the snout, and it can be opened incredibly wide to engulf prey that is nearly half its own size. Inside this gaping maw are approximately 300 trident-shaped teeth, arranged in about 25 rows, each tooth with 3 sharp, backward-curving cusps. This formidable array is designed not to tear flesh, but to snag and hold onto slippery prey such as squid and fish, preventing any chance of escape. This unique jaw structure allows the frilled shark to strike in a manner quite unlike other sharks, lunging forward and swallowing its prey whole, using its flexible body to coil around the victim. Its coloration is a dark, chocolatey brown, which provides excellent camouflage in the dim light of its deep-water habitat, making it nearly invisible to both prey and predators. The shark's name comes from the 6 pairs of gill slits on its throat, which are covered by a frilly, fringed margin of skin, a feature that is unique to this species. These gill slits are not positioned on the sides of the head like other sharks, but rather run along the lower side of the neck, adding to its serpentine appearance. Despite its fearsome appearance, the frilled shark is a slow-moving and relatively sluggish creature adapted for a life of ambush rather than active pursuit. It is rarely seen alive as it inhabits depths of 120 to 1,500 meters, deep below the reach of sunlight and far from the world of human activity. Most of what we know about this species comes from specimens that are accidentally caught in deep-sea fishing nets or that occasionally wash ashore, long dead. The deepest confirmed sightings of this enigmatic shark have been recorded at depths of around 1,170 meters, a realm of immense pressure and perpetual darkness. The frilled shark is a true relic, a survivor from a time when the oceans were filled with creatures that no longer exist. Its gestation period is one of the longest of any vertebrate, lasting up to 3.5 years, a slow and patient investment in the next generation. The young are born live, in litters of 2 to 15, and they are fully formed predators from the moment of birth, ready to hunt in the cold, dark waters of their abyssal home. It is a creature of profound mystery, a living embodiment of the deep ocean's ability to preserve ancient life forms, hidden from the world and moving through the depths with a ghostly, primordial grace. The frilled shark's body is a testament to the power of evolutionary stasis, a design so effective that it has remained largely unchanged for tens of millions of years. It is a deep-sea apex predator in its own right, but it is also a fragile creature, vulnerable to the changes that humans are bringing to the ocean. Because it is so rarely seen, scientists know very little about its population size or its behavior, making it a difficult species to protect. Every encounter with this animal is a rare and precious event, a glimpse into a world that existed long before the rise of our own species, a living fossil that still swims in the silent, lightless depths of the world's oceans. The frilled shark's hunting strategy is a masterclass in patience and ambush, a method refined over eons in an environment where energy must be conserved at all costs. It does not chase its prey with speed, but rather relies on a sudden, explosive strike from a coiled position, its body lunging forward like a spring released. Its jaws, which open incredibly wide, are lined with over 300 needle-sharp, backward curved teeth, arranged in multiple rows that form a formidable trap. Once prey is ensnared, these teeth make escape nearly impossible, as any struggling movement only drives the victim deeper into the shark's grasp. This dental arrangement, so different from the cutting teeth of modern sharks, is a key feature linking it to ancient lineages that dominated the seas millions of years before the first dinosaurs walked the earth. The creature's diet consists primarily of cephalopods, such as squid and octopus, along with a variety of bony fish that share its deep-water habitat. Its long, flexible body allows it to contort and twist in tight spaces, enabling it to pursue prey into crevices and rocky outcrops where larger predators cannot follow. The shark's coloration, a uniform dark brown or gray, provides near-perfect camouflage in the dim light of the mesopelagic and bathipelagic zones, where even the faintest silhouette can mean the difference between a meal and starvation. It is believed to use its highly sensitive lateral line system to detect the vibrations and pressure changes caused by potential prey moving through the water, a sense that is far more critical than vision in the perpetual darkness below. This reliance on sensory perception over sight is a common adaptation among deep-sea creatures, a testament to the harsh realities of life where sunlight never penetrates. Reproduction in the frilled shark remains one of the most poorly understood aspects of its biology, largely due to the extreme difficulty of observing this species in its natural habitat. What scientists do know comes from the rare specimens that are caught as bycatch or found stranded, offering only fleeting glimpses into their life cycle. The gestation period is believed to be exceptionally long, possibly lasting for years, which would be the longest of any known vertebrate, though this estimate is based on limited data. This slow reproductive rate, combined with a late age of maturity, makes the species particularly vulnerable to any form of population disturbance, as it cannot quickly recover from losses. The young are born in litters of 2 to 15, and they are fully formed predators from the moment of birth, ready to hunt in the cold, dark waters of their abyssal home. The frilled shark's geographic distribution is thought to be broad, with specimens recovered from the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, as well as the waters surrounding Japan, New Zealand, and parts of Europe. It is typically found at depths ranging from 400 to over 1,500 meters, though there have been occasional unexplained sightings in shallower waters. These rare shallow water appearances are often attributed to the shark following its prey, or perhaps being displaced by shifts in ocean currents or temperature. Each capture or sighting provides invaluable data, allowing scientists to piece together a more complete picture of its distribution and habitat preferences. However, the vastness of the deep ocean means that much of its range remains entirely unexplored, leaving vast gaps in our understanding. The evolutionary history of the frilled shark stretches back to a time when the continents were arranged in vastly different configurations and the oceans teemed with creatures that have long since vanished. Fossil records indicate that sharks of a similar form existed during the Cretaceous period, over 80 million years ago, and possibly even earlier. These ancient relatives shared the same distinctive features, such as the elongated body and the multicusped teeth, suggesting a remarkable degree of morphological stability. This is a prime example of evolutionary stasis, where a successful body plan remains unchanged for millions of years because it is so well suited to its environment. The deep sea, with its stable temperatures, high pressure, and lack of light, provides a remarkably consistent habitat, offering few pressures for significant evolutionary change. The frilled shark is not a large animal by shark standards, with most adults reaching lengths of around 2 meters, though some specimens have been recorded at slightly larger sizes. Its body is eel-like and slender, with a single dorsal fin located far back on its body, a feature that distinguishes it from most other sharks. The gill slits, of which there are 6 pairs, are positioned low on the throat, and the first pair is continuous across the throat, giving it a frilled appearance that is the source of its common name. This unusual gill structure allows it to take in water through the mouth, over the gills, and out through the slits, a process that is efficient even when the shark is at rest. The pectoral fins are small and rounded, adding to its serpentine profile, and its tail fin is small and lacks a distinct lower lobe. In the lightless depths, the frilled shark relies on a suite of sensory organs that are far more refined than those of its shallow water relatives. Its eyes are relatively large and are adapted for low light conditions, but they are not its primary means of detecting prey. Instead, it depends heavily on electroreception, using specialized pores known as the ampullae of Lorenzini to sense the weak electrical fields generated by the muscle movements of other animals. This ability allows it to detect prey that is hidden beneath the sediment or lurking in the shadows, even in complete darkness. The lateral line, a system of fluid-filled canals running along the sides of its body, detects changes in water pressure and vibration, providing a constant stream of information about its surroundings. Together, these senses create a detailed three-dimensional map of the environment, enabling the shark to navigate and hunt with remarkable precision. The frilled shark's role in the deep-sea ecosystem is that of a mid-level predator, occupying a niche between the smaller fish and invertebrates and the larger apex predators like the six-gill shark. Its presence helps to regulate populations of its prey, contributing to the overall balance of the abyssal food web. It is itself preyed upon by larger sharks and marine mammals, though the scarcity of encounters suggests that it is not a primary food source for any species. The deep sea is a world of scarcity, where every meal is hard-won, and the frilled shark has evolved to make the most of every opportunity. Its slow metabolism and energy-efficient hunting style allow it to survive for long periods without food, a crucial adaptation in an environment where prey can be few and far between. The threats facing the frilled shark are numerous and largely anthropogenic, despite the creature's remote habitat. It is frequently caught as bycatch in deep-sea trawling and longline fisheries, which target other species such as the Patagonian toothfish and various deep-sea squids. These fishing operations can cause significant damage to the seafloor and its inhabitants, and the frilled shark, with its slow reproductive rate, is particularly susceptible to population declines. Climate change is also a growing concern, as shifting ocean temperatures and acidification can alter the distribution of its prey and disrupt the delicate balance of the deep-sea ecosystem. Pollution, including plastic debris and chemical contaminants, has been found even in the deepest parts of the ocean, and its effects on deep-sea species are only beginning to be understood. Conservation efforts for the frilled shark are hampered by a fundamental lack of data, as scientists do not know its population size, its exact range, or its reproductive habits. It has been assessed by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, but it is currently listed as of least concern, though this classification is based on incomplete information. Many experts believe that this status is misleading and that the species may be far more vulnerable than currently recognized. The creation of marine protected areas that encompass deep-sea habitats could offer some refuge, but enforcement in such remote regions is challenging. Further research is desperately needed to understand the basic biology of this enigmatic creature, so that effective conservation measures can be implemented before it is too late. The frilled shark serves as a powerful symbol of the deep ocean's capacity to harbor life forms that seem to belong to another era, a living link to a past that predates the age of dinosaurs. Its continued existence is a reminder that the natural world is far more ancient and far more mysterious than we often appreciate. Every time a specimen is brought to the surface, it captures the imagination of scientists and the public alike, offering a tangible connection to a vanished world. It is a creature that embodies the spirit of discovery, a testament to the fact that there are still vast frontiers on our own planet that remain unexplored. The deep sea, with its crushing pressures and eternal darkness, is the last great wilderness on Earth, and the frilled shark is one of its most remarkable denizens. As the ocean currents slowly drift around this ancient predator, it continues its solitary existence, a ghost in the abyss, hunting and surviving as its ancestors have done for countless millennia. Its world is one of silence and stillness, punctuated by rare moments of sudden, violent action when prey comes within striking distance. It is a life that is almost entirely hidden from human view, a secret kept by the deep sea, which guards its mysteries jealously. The frilled shark is not a creature that seeks attention, nor does it need our approval to exist, but its fate is now inextricably linked to our own actions. Whether it will continue to swim in the depths for another 100 million years depends on the choices we make today as stewards of the planet we all share. The frilled shark's hunting strategy is as ancient as its lineage, relying on ambush and sudden acceleration rather than sustained pursuit. Its elongated, highly flexible body allows it to coil like a serpent before lunging forward, a motion that is both swift and almost imperceptible in the dim light of its habitat. When it strikes, its jaws open wide to reveal multiple rows of needle-sharp, recurved teeth, each one designed to grip slippery prey and prevent any chance of escape. Unlike the massive, serrated teeth of modern predatory sharks, these are tools of capture and restraint, ensuring that once a fish or cephalopod is seized, it is already doomed. The shark then swallows its meal whole, its distensible stomach accommodating prey that may be nearly half its own body length, a remarkable feat of biological engineering. This feeding behavior is a direct inheritance from a time when the oceans were dominated by creatures that moved slowly and relied on stealth over speed. The frilled shark's closest living relatives, such as the 6-gill and 7-gill sharks, share similar primitive traits, including a lack of the specialized adaptations seen in more derived species. Its skeleton is entirely cartilaginous, lacking the calcified bone that gives strength to the skeletons of most vertebrates, yet this very feature provides an unexpected advantage in the deep sea. Cartilage is lighter and more flexible than bone, allowing the shark to conserve energy in a realm where food is scarce and every calorie must be carefully spent. Its liver, large and rich in low-density oils, provides buoyancy, counteracting the weight of its dense body and allowing it to hover effortlessly in the water column with minimal muscular effort. Reproduction in the frilled shark is equally archaic, following a pattern that predates the evolution of many modern fish. It is ovoviviparous, meaning that embryos develop inside eggs that remain within the mother's body until they are ready to hatch and emerge as fully formed young. This strategy provides a significant survival advantage in the deep sea, where the open water offers no shelter for vulnerable eggs or hatchlings. The gestation period is believed to be exceptionally long, possibly lasting up to 3.5 years, one of the longest known for any vertebrate. When the young are finally born, they are miniature replicas of their parents, equipped with the same formidable jaws and instinctive hunting skills that have served their species for over 80 million years. The frilled shark's distribution is global but patchy, with confirmed sightings recorded from the cold, deep waters off the coasts of Japan, New Zealand, Norway, and the western coast of Africa. These scattered populations suggest that the species has a wide but specific preference for continental slopes and submarine canyons, where upwelling currents bring nutrients and attract potential prey. It is most commonly encountered at depths ranging from 120 to 1,500 meters, though some specimens have been found as deep as 1,570 meters in a zone where sunlight never penetrates. This habitat is characterized by near-freezing temperatures, pressures exceeding 100 atmospheres, and a complete absence of photosynthetic life. In such an environment, the frilled shark is a top predator, occupying a niche that few other species can tolerate, and its presence indicates a healthy, functioning deep-sea ecosystem. The giant isopod, a distant cousin of the humble woodlouse found in gardens, has evolved to survive in this same crushing environment, but through a completely different set of adaptations. Its body is covered in a hard, segmented exoskeleton that provides both protection and structural support, and it can roll into a tight ball when threatened, a defensive behavior shared with its terrestrial relatives. This creature can grow to over 50 centimeters in length, making it one of the largest crustaceans in the deep sea, and its 7 pairs of legs are adapted for walking along the soft, muddy seafloor. It is a scavenger and an opportunistic predator, feeding on the carcasses of fish, whales, and other marine animals that drift down from the sunlit waters above. When a large food source is discovered, the giant isopod will gorge itself to the point of immobility, storing fat reserves that allow it to survive for months or even years without another meal. The metabolism of the giant isopod is remarkably slow, a direct consequence of the cold temperatures and scarce food supply of its deep-sea home. Its heart beats only a few times per minute, and its body temperature matches the surrounding water, which hovers just above freezing. This torpor-like state allows it to conserve energy over long periods, and it is not uncommon for these creatures to remain motionless on the seafloor for weeks at a time. When they do move, it is with a slow, deliberate gait, each leg moving in a coordinated rhythm that propels them across the sediment with surprising efficiency. Their antennae are constantly sweeping the water around them, detecting the chemical signatures of potential food, and their compound eyes, though small, are highly sensitive to the faint bioluminescent glows emitted by other deep-sea organisms. Giant isopods are found in abundance in the cold, deep waters of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, often congregating in large numbers around hydrothermal vents or whale falls. These gatherings can number in the hundreds, creating a seething mass of armored bodies that work together to strip a carcass clean over several weeks. This communal feeding behavior is a relatively recent discovery, and it suggests that these creatures are far more social than previously believed. They communicate through chemical signals and tactile contact, and there is evidence of a hierarchical structure within these groups, with larger individuals dominating access to the best feeding spots. Despite their ferocious appearance, they are harmless to humans, and their slow, deliberate movements make them a fascinating subject for deep-sea submersible observations. The horseshoe crab, though often found in shallower waters, shares a deep evolutionary history with these abyssal creatures, having remained virtually unchanged for over 450 million years. Its body is a masterpiece of biological design, with a hard, horseshoe-shaped carapace that protects its vital organs and a long, spiked tail that is used for steering and righting itself when overturned. Unlike the frilled shark and the giant isopod, the horseshoe crab is a creature of the intertidal zone, migrating to sandy beaches each spring to lay its eggs in the warm shallows. These mass spawning events are among the most spectacular natural phenomena on Earth, attracting thousands of shorebirds that feast on the nutrient-rich eggs. The crabs themselves emerge from the surf in waves, their shells glistening in the moonlight, and they dig small nests in the sand where each female deposits up to 90,000 eggs. The blood of the horseshoe crab is a brilliant blue, a result of copper-based hemocyanin that transports oxygen through its body, a stark contrast to the iron-based hemoglobin of vertebrates. This blood contains a unique compound called limulus amebocyte lysate, or LAL, which coagulates when it comes into contact with bacterial endotoxins. This remarkable property has made the horseshoe crab an invaluable asset to the pharmaceutical industry, as LAL is used to test every injectable drug and medical device for bacterial contamination. This process has saved countless human lives, but it has also put the species under significant pressure, as millions of crabs are harvested each year for their blood. Fortunately, the crabs are typically released after the bleeding process, and mortality rates have been reduced through improved handling techniques. But the long-term impact on wild populations remains a subject of ongoing study. The horseshoe crab's 10 eyes are another testament to its ancient lineage, each one adapted to a specific visual function. Two large compound eyes on the top of its carapace are used for detecting movement and navigating during spawning, while a pair of simple eyes on the front of its head senses ultraviolet light. A set of 5 additional eyes, located on the underside and near the mouth, help the crab orient itself in the murky waters where it searches for worms and mollusks. These eyes have remained essentially unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, a living example of evolutionary stasis. The horseshoe crab's nervous system is also primitive, with a simple brain that is little more than a series of ganglia, yet it is perfectly adapted to the crab's relatively simple lifestyle. All 3 of these creatures, the frilled shark, the giant isopod, and the horseshoe crab, represent distinct branches of the tree of life that have survived major extinction events, including the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. They are not relics in the sense of being maladapted or on the verge of extinction. Rather, they are highly successful species that have found a niche that requires little change over geological time. Their continued existence is a powerful reminder that evolution is not a linear progression toward complexity, but a branching process that can produce perfectly adapted forms at any level of complexity. The deep sea, in particular, has acted as a refuge for these ancient lineages, its stable conditions and isolation protecting them from the rapid environmental changes that have driven so many other species to extinction. The study of these living fossils has profound implications for our understanding of evolutionary biology and the resilience of life on Earth. By examining their genomes, scientists have been able to trace the genetic changes that have occurred over hundreds of millions of years, revealing the molecular mechanisms that underpin their remarkable stability. For example, the horseshoe crab has one of the largest genomes of any invertebrate, containing a vast array of repetitive DNA that may play a role in its ability to adapt to changing conditions. Similarly, the frilled shark's genome shows evidence of a slow mutation rate, suggesting that its environment has remained remarkably consistent over deep time. These findings challenge the assumption that all species are constantly evolving, and they highlight the importance of preserving the few remaining habitats where such ancient life still thrives. The conservation of these species is not merely an academic exercise. It has direct implications for human health and the stability of marine ecosystems. The horseshoe crab's blood has been essential to the development of safe vaccines and medical devices, and any decline in its population could have serious consequences for global health care. The giant isopod and the frilled shark, while less directly useful to humans, are key indicators of the health of deep-sea environments, which play a crucial role in regulating the Earth's climate by absorbing carbon dioxide. The deep sea is also a source of valuable minerals and rare earth elements, and there is growing pressure to exploit these resources through deep-sea mining. Such activities would inevitably disturb the delicate ecosystems that these ancient creatures call home, and the long-term consequences are unknown. As we continue to explore the ocean's depths, we are constantly reminded of how much we have yet to learn. Every new submersible dive brings back images of creatures that have never been seen before, and genetic analysis often reveals that even familiar species are far more diverse than we once thought. The frilled shark, the giant isopod, and the horseshoe crab are just 3 examples of the countless species that have survived for millions of years, and their stories are a testament to the tenacity of life. They have witnessed the rise and fall of continents, the shifting of ocean currents, and the impact of asteroids, and yet they remain unchanged in their essential form. To lose them now, through our own actions, would be an irreplaceable loss, a permanent erasure of a lineage that has outlasted every other terrestrial vertebrate. The responsibility to protect them is not a matter of sentimentality, but a fundamental obligation to preserve the full diversity of life that has evolved on this planet. The ocean's abyss holds creatures that have drifted through time almost unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, yet the very stillness of their forms presents one of biology's most profound enigmas. We have traced their anatomy, their ancient origins, and their place in the tree of life, but the deepest question remains unanswered. Why did evolution, that relentless engine of change, seem to press the pause button for these lineages? The answer, if it exists, is not written in the fossil record alone, but in the delicate chemistry of their DNA, a language we are only beginning to decipher. The prevailing hypothesis, supported by recent genomic studies, suggests that these animals possess remarkably slow rates of molecular evolution. While the genes of most vertebrates and invertebrates accumulate mutations at a steady, predictable pace, the genomes of creatures like the coelacanth and the nautilus appear to tick at a fraction of that speed. This is not a mere slowing of the clock, but a fundamental difference in how their genetic material is copied and repaired across generations. For them, the march of genetic drift is less a hurried stride and more a contemplative saunter, preserving the sequence of life's instructions in near pristine condition. But this observation only deepens the mystery, shifting the question from what to why. The reason for this genomic inertia remains a subject of intense debate and speculation, with no single answer yet satisfying the scientific community. One leading theory proposes that the stable, unchanging environments of the deep sea have removed the selective pressures that typically drive rapid genetic change. In a world of constant darkness, cold, and pressure, where conditions have remained largely uniform for eons, there is simply no push for adaptation, and thus no need for change. Another possibility points to the remarkable efficiency of their DNA repair mechanisms, which may correct errors with far greater fidelity than those of other animals. If the cellular machinery responsible for proofreading and fixing damaged DNA operates with near-perfect precision, then the raw material for evolutionary change, random mutation, is simply never generated. This would not be a passive lack of change, but an active, molecular-level suppression of variation, a biological conservatism enforced from within. Adding another layer to this puzzle is the discovery of specific longevity genes, particularly those associated with the FOXO family of transcription factors in some living fossils. These genes, known to play critical roles in cellular repair, stress resistance, and the regulation of lifespan, are found in unusually high numbers, or with unique variations in these ancient lineages. The presence of such robust maintenance pathways suggests that their slow evolution may be intrinsically linked to their remarkable longevity, a dual strategy of cellular preservation and genetic stasis. The coelacanth, for instance, possesses a suite of genes that appear to have evolved to protect against the accumulation of damaged proteins and the ravages of oxidative stress. These mechanisms, far more potent than those found in typical fish, may explain how these animals can live for decades, perhaps even a century, while maintaining the same physiological blueprint. It is as if their bodies are engineered not just to survive, but to resist the very passage of time, a quality that extends from their cells to their very genomes. Yet the more we learn, the more we must confront a disquieting possibility that challenges the very definition of a living fossil. The debate over whether these creatures have truly stopped evolving or whether they merely look the same on the outside while undergoing significant internal changes is one of the most contentious in modern paleontology. This concept, known as cryptic evolution, suggests that the outward morphology, the shape of a shell, the form of a fin, can remain static while the underlying physiology, biochemistry, and even genetic regulation continue to evolve in subtle, invisible ways. The nautilus, with its iconic spiral shell, serves as a perfect case study for this internal change. While its shell has remained essentially unchanged for over 500 million years, molecular analyses are revealing that its immune system, sensory organs, and metabolic pathways may be far more complex and derived than previously assumed. Its eye, a simple pinhole camera, lacks a lens. Yet, the genetic toolkit it uses to build this organ is startlingly similar to that of complex, lensed eyes in other animals, suggesting a hidden layer of genetic sophistication. Similarly, the horseshoe crab, often cited as the ultimate example of morphological stasis, is now known to possess a complex immune system with unique blood cells that are exquisitely sensitive to bacterial toxins. This internal adaptation, which has no external manifestation, is not a relic of the past, but a highly evolved, sophisticated defense mechanism that has allowed it to survive in changing coastal environments. The outward shell may be ancient, but the blood that courses through it is a product of ongoing, relentless evolution. This hidden evolution is also being uncovered in the deep-sea isopod, whose external appearance has remained constant for hundreds of millions of years. Yet, genetic studies are revealing that different populations, separated by the vast pressures and cold of the deep, are accumulating distinct genetic differences in their reproductive and metabolic genes. These are not changes in form, but changes in function, suggesting that evolution is not so much halted as it is channeled into invisible pathways, fine-tuning the internal workings of life while leaving the exterior untouched. The question, then, is whether the term living fossil is a misleading oversimplification, a label that focuses on what we can see rather than what we cannot. Perhaps these creatures are not frozen in time, but are instead masters of a different kind of evolution, one that prioritizes stability over novelty. They may have found a successful formula and are simply perfecting it, tweaking the machinery beneath the hood while keeping the chassis unchanged, a strategy that has proven successful for hundreds of millions of years. For the coelacanth, the most iconic of all living fossils, the genomic evidence points to a lineage that has experienced a dramatic slowdown in protein-coding genes, yet has seen significant activity in non-coding regions. These regulatory elements, once dismissed as junk DNA, are now known to control when and where genes are expressed, and their evolution suggests a continuous process of fine-tuning. The coelacanth is not a static relic, but a dynamic organism engaged in a subtle, ongoing dialogue with its environment, a dialogue we are only just beginning to hear. The conservation of these ancient lineages is not merely a matter of preserving biological curiosities. It is a fight to protect a unique and irreplaceable chapter of evolutionary history. Each species faces a distinct set of threats, driven by human activity, that are pushing them ever closer to the brink of extinction. The coelacanth, once thought to have vanished with the dinosaurs, is now critically endangered, with the population in the Comoros estimated at a mere 500 individuals. This tiny, vulnerable population, confined to a handful of volcanic caves, is under constant threat from accidental capture by deep-sea fishing operations. The nautilus, with its beautiful chambered shell, is a target of a different kind of exploitation. Listed under CITES Appendix 2, which regulates trade to prevent unsustainable exploitation, the nautilus is still heavily harvested for its shell, which is sold as a decorative object to tourists and collectors. The international trade in nautilus shells is a lucrative business, and despite regulations, illegal and unregulated harvesting continues to deplete populations across the Indo-Pacific. The very feature that has allowed the nautilus to survive for 500 million years, its protective shell, is now the instrument of its potential demise. The horseshoe crab, a creature that has survived for over 450 million years, faces a threat that is both unique and insidious. Its blood, which is a brilliant blue due to the presence of copper-based hemocyanin, contains a unique clotting agent called limulus amoebocyte lysate, or LL. This substance is so exquisitely sensitive to bacterial endotoxins that it is used by the pharmaceutical industry to test every injectable drug and medical device for contamination. The harvesting of horseshoe crabs for this purpose is a massive industry, and while the crabs are typically bled and released, the process is not without its mortality, and the trauma of capture and bleeding takes a significant toll on their populations. The giant isopod, a denizen of the deep sea floor, is a victim of the expanding reach of commercial fishing. As trawlers push into ever deeper waters in search of new stocks, they drag their nets across the seafloor, scooping up everything in their path. The giant isopod, along with countless other deep-sea creatures, is caught as bycatch, a term that belies the devastating impact of this collateral damage. These animals, adapted to a life of extreme pressure and cold, are brought to the surface where they die, discarded as waste, their ancient lineage a casualty of our insatiable appetite for seafood. The urgency of these conservation efforts is underscored by the very nature of these animals' slow evolution. A species that takes millions of years to adapt is inherently vulnerable to rapid environmental change. The climate crisis, ocean acidification, and the direct impacts of human exploitation are all occurring at a pace that these living fossils, with their conservative genomes, simply cannot match. They are not equipped to deal with the sudden, drastic alterations to their world, and their slow evolution is now a liability, a biological straitjacket that prevents them from escaping their own extinction. Genomic sequencing, the very tool that is revealing the secrets of their slow evolution, is also becoming a critical component of their conservation. By mapping the complete genetic code of these species, scientists can assess their genetic diversity, identify distinct populations, and understand their evolutionary potential. This information is vital for developing effective management strategies, such as establishing marine protected areas, managing fisheries, and even planning for potential captive breeding programs. The more we know about their genetic makeup, the better equipped we are to protect them. For the coelacanth, genomic data has revealed that the small population in the Comoros is genetically distinct from the population discovered off the coast of Indonesia, and that both are at risk of inbreeding. This information is crucial for conservationists, as it highlights the need to protect both populations and to prevent the mixing of these genetically unique lineages. The genome is not just a record of the past, it is a blueprint for the future, and understanding it is essential for any hope of securing that future. The study of living fossils is, at its heart, a study of time itself. Their genomes are vast libraries of information, preserving the genetic code of ancestors that lived before the first dinosaur ever walked the earth. By sequencing these genomes, we are not just looking at a modern animal, we are reading a message from the deep past, a message that has been faithfully copied and passed down through countless generations. The question of why this message has remained so unchanged is a question about the fundamental nature of evolution and the forces that can bring it to a standstill. One of the most profound open questions is whether the mechanisms that slow evolution in these lineages are a cause or a consequence of their longevity. Are they long-lived because they have slow-evolving genomes, or do they have slow-evolving genomes because they are long-lived? The answer, which may lie in the complex interplay between cellular repair, metabolism, and reproduction, remains elusive. It is a chicken-and-egg problem at the molecular level, a puzzle that may require decades of further research to solve. Another mystery is the role of the environment in driving evolutionary stasis. The deep sea is often described as a stable, unchanging environment, but we now know that it is subject to dramatic shifts in temperature, oxygen levels, and food supply over geological timescales. How have living fossils survived these changes without altering their form? Perhaps their internal adaptability, the cryptic evolution we are only now discovering, has allowed them to weather these storms while maintaining their external appearance. Or perhaps their environments are more stable than we think, and their stasis is a true reflection of a world without change. The question of whether there is a limit to evolutionary stasis is also open. Can a lineage remain unchanged indefinitely? Or is there an eventual, inevitable accumulation of change that will eventually alter its form? The fossil record suggests that some lineages, like the brachiopods, have remained stable for hundreds of millions of years before eventually going extinct or diversifying. This suggests that stasis is not a permanent state, but a temporary equilibrium, a delicate balance that can be upset by major environmental disruptions. The very definition of a species is challenged by the concept of the living fossil. If a species remains morphologically unchanged for millions of years, but its genes are slowly diverging, at what point does it become a new species? This is not just a philosophical question, but a practical one for conservation, as the legal protection of a species depends on our ability to define its boundaries. The more we learn about the hidden genetic diversity within these ancient lineages, the more complex our understanding of species becomes. The role of genetic drift, the random fluctuation of gene frequencies, is another area of uncertainty. In small populations like the coelacanth in the Comoros, genetic drift can be a powerful force, leading to the loss of genetic diversity and an increased risk of inbreeding. How much of the genetic change we see in living fossils is due to natural selection, and how much is due to this random, non-adaptive process? The answer is likely a complex mix of both, and disentangling their relative contributions is a major challenge for evolutionary biologists. We are also only beginning to understand the role of epigenetics, the chemical modifications to DNA that can alter gene expression without changing the underlying sequence. These modifications can be influenced by the environment and can even be passed down to offspring, providing a potential mechanism for rapid, non-genetic adaptation. Could epigenetics be the hidden engine of adaptation in living fossils, allowing them to respond to environmental changes without altering their core genome? This is a tantalizing hypothesis that remains largely unexplored. The discovery of transposable elements, or jumping genes in the genomes of living fossils, adds yet another layer of complexity. These mobile pieces of DNA can insert themselves into new locations, disrupting genes and creating new genetic variation. Some studies have shown that living fossils have a lower abundance of these elements, which may contribute to their genomic stability. But why they have managed to keep these genomic parasites in check while other species have not, is a question that remains unanswered. The interaction between the genome and the microbiome, the community of bacteria and other microorganisms that live in and on an animal, is another frontier of research. Do living fossils have unique microbiomes that contribute to their survival and their slow evolution? And how does the loss of these microbial partners due to environmental change or captivity affect their health and their ability to adapt? These are questions that are only just beginning to be asked. The conservation of living fossils is not just about saving individual species. It is about preserving the evolutionary processes that have shaped life on Earth for billions of years. These creatures are not just relics of the past, they are active participants in the present, occupying unique ecological niches and playing vital roles in their ecosystems. The coelacanth, for example, is a top predator in the deep-sea caves it inhabits, and its loss would likely have cascading effects on the entire community. The horseshoe crab is a keystone species on the beaches of the Atlantic coast of North America, where its eggs provide a critical food source for migratory shorebirds. The decline of the horseshoe crab has a direct impact on the survival of these birds, demonstrating that the loss of a living fossil is not an isolated event, but a disruption of an entire web of life. The conservation of these ancient creatures is therefore a matter of ecosystem health, not just species preservation. The deep sea, where so many living fossils reside, is one of the least explored and most poorly understood environments on Earth. We have mapped the surface of Mars in greater detail than we have mapped the ocean floor, and the creatures that live in the abyss remain largely unknown. The threats they face, from deep-sea trawling to the potential impacts of deep-sea mining, are being imposed on them without a full understanding of the consequences. The protection of these habitats is essential for the survival of the living fossils that call them home. The future of living fossils depends on a global commitment to conservation, one that is informed by the latest scientific research and driven by a recognition of their profound value. This requires not only the establishment of protected areas and the regulation of harmful practices, but also a fundamental shift in our relationship with the natural world. We must move from a perspective of exploitation to one of stewardship, recognizing that these ancient lineages are not resources to be consumed, but treasures to be preserved. The questions that remain open about evolutionary stasis are not just academic curiosities. They are central to our understanding of life's resilience and fragility. Why do some lineages persist for hundreds of millions of years while others flash into existence and vanish in an instant? What are the limits of adaptation, and how do organisms cope with change when their genomes are locked into a conservative mode? The answers to these questions may hold lessons for our own species, which is now facing a period of unprecedented environmental change. The study of living fossils is a humbling endeavor, reminding us of the immense timescales of life on Earth and the relative brevity of our own existence. These creatures have witnessed the rise and fall of continents, the comings and goings of ice ages, and the mass extinctions that have reshaped the biosphere. They are living archives of deep time, and their genomes are the pages of a book that we are only beginning to learn to read. As we continue to decipher their secrets, we must also act to ensure that they are not lost forever. The silence of the deep is not an absence of life, but a presence of ancient, patient forms, each one a testament to the power of survival. The coelacanth waits in its volcanic cave, the nautilus drifts in its spiral shell, the horseshoe crab scuttles across the ancient sands, and the giant isopod crawls through the perpetual night. They are not frozen in time, but they are moving at a different pace, a pace that we are only beginning to comprehend. Their future, and the future of the knowledge they hold, hangs in the balance, a delicate thread that we have the power to protect or to sever. The thread of which we speak is not a single strand, but a vast and intricate web that connects the shallowest tide pool to the most profound abyssal trench. Each living fossil, from the delicate fronds of a crinoid to the armored plates of a trilobite's distant cousin, occupies a unique position in this web, a position shaped by hundreds of millions of years of interaction with its environment. To understand their evolutionary stasis is to understand that stability itself can be a form of adaptation, a strategy that has proven remarkably resilient against the chaotic whims of planetary change. The very features that we marvel at as ancient, such as the hinged shell of a brachiopod or the five-fold symmetry of a brittle star, are not primitive failures, but rather exquisitely refined solutions to enduring ecological challenges. These are designs that have been tested by countless generations, and they have not been found wanting. The mystery of their morphological constancy deepens when we consider the genetic machinery that underlies it. While their outward forms may appear unchanged for eons, their genomes are not static libraries, but dynamic, living documents that record the subtle negotiations between mutation and selection. Recent studies of the horseshoe crab genome, for example, have revealed a remarkable capacity for gene duplication, a process that can provide the raw material for evolutionary novelty even as the overall body plan remains steadfast. This suggests that stasis is not an absence of change at the molecular level, but rather a powerful canalization of change, a funneling of variation into pathways that preserve the functional integrity of the organism. The genetic code of a nautilus, with its many repeated sequences, tells a story of ancient whole genome duplications that may have provided the redundancy necessary for its lineage to weather the storms of extinction. These creatures are not simply unchanged, they are the products of a continuous internal evolutionary dialogue that has consistently reaffirmed the same fundamental answers. This genetic resilience is particularly poignant when we consider the conservation challenges that these species face today. The very environments that have provided such stable refugia for millions of years are now being altered at a rate that far outstrips any natural cycle. The deep-sea coral gardens where the glass sponges thrive are threatened by bottom trawling, a practice that can obliterate structures that have been growing for millennia in a single pass of a net. The shallow, sandy flats that are the breeding grounds of the horseshoe crab are being eroded by coastal development and polluted by agricultural runoff, disrupting the ancient ritual of spawning that has occurred every spring for hundreds of millions of years. The nautilus, with its beautiful shell prized by collectors, is now the target of targeted fisheries that have decimated populations across the Indo-Pacific, a direct consequence of human desire for a decorative object. The coelacanth, once thought to be beyond the reach of human impact, now finds its deep volcanic caves threatened by the potential for mineral exploration and the indirect effects of climate change on ocean currents and oxygen levels. The conservation of these living fossils is not merely a matter of preserving a few oddities for the sake of scientific curiosity. It is a profound ethical and practical question about the value we place on biological heritage. When we lose a species like the coelacanth, we are not just losing a single population of fish. We are losing a unique branch on the tree of life, a lineage that has been evolving independently for over 400 million years and that holds within its cells the solutions to countless biological problems. The compounds found in the blood of the horseshoe crab, which are used to detect bacterial contamination in medical devices and vaccines, are a direct and irreplaceable contribution to human health. The study of the nautilus's buoyancy mechanism has inspired engineering designs, and the remarkable regenerative abilities of brittle stars are being investigated for their potential to inform human medicine. Each extinction silences a potential source of innovation, a library of natural history that we have barely begun to read. The concept of evolutionary stasis, once a paradox that puzzled Darwin himself, is now understood as a dynamic equilibrium, a state of balance between the forces of change and the power of stabilizing selection. These creatures are not passive relics, but active participants in their own survival, constantly fine-tuning their physiology and behavior to match the rhythms of their environment. The deep sea, far from being a static, unchanging world, is a place of subtle currents, seasonal pulses of organic matter, and episodic volcanic and hydrothermal activity. The animals that live there have adapted to these rhythms with a patience that is almost incomprehensible to a species like our own, which measures time in heartbeats and sunrises. Their world is one of glacial pace, where a single meal might be a rare event and where growth is measured in millimeters over decades. This slow existence is not a failure but a mastery of a particular niche, a way of life that has proven its worth over timescales that dwarf the entirety of human history. Our efforts to conserve these species are therefore a race against the clock, a struggle to reconcile our own rapid, transformative impact on the planet with the slow, deliberate pace of these ancient lineages. We are, in a very real sense, imposing our timescale upon theirs, with consequences that we cannot fully predict. The warming of the oceans, driven by our own industrial activity, is causing coral bleaching that threatens the reef habitats of countless species, including the chambered nautilus and the horseshoe crab's shallow water relatives. The acidification of the seas, another byproduct of increased carbon dioxide, makes it more difficult for shell-building organisms like the nautilus and the brachiopod to form their protective structures. These are not distant hypothetical threats but present, accelerating realities that are already being measured in the field. The very chemistry of the ocean, a constant for millions of years, is being altered at a rate that these organisms have never experienced. The challenge of conservation is further complicated by the very nature of the deep ocean, a realm that is vast, remote, and difficult to study. We have mapped the surface of Mars in greater detail than we have mapped the seafloor, and the majority of species that live in the deep remain undescribed by science. This lack of knowledge makes it difficult to establish effective protected areas, as we often do not know where the critical habitats are or how the populations are connected. The creation of marine reserves, such as the one that protects the coelacanth population in the Comoros, is a crucial first step, but it is only a small piece of a much larger puzzle. We must also address the global drivers of ocean change, from greenhouse gas emissions to plastic pollution to the unsustainable exploitation of marine resources. The fate of the living fossils is inextricably linked to the health of the entire ocean, and we cannot save them in isolation. Perhaps the most profound lesson we can learn from these ancient creatures is the importance of perspective. Their existence challenges our anthropocentric view of time and progress, reminding us that the story of life is not a simple linear progression from simple to complex. The coelacanth is not a failed fish that gave rise to tetrapods. It is a successful fish that has persisted alongside its more derived relatives. The nautilus is not a primitive version of the squid or the octopus. It is a master of a different kind of life, one that has thrived in the open ocean for hundreds of millions of years. Their stasis is a testament to the power of adaptation through stability, a reminder that the most successful strategies are often the ones that are refined over immense periods of time. As we look to the future of life on Earth, we would do well to consider the lessons of these survivors, to learn from their patience and their resilience. The work of conservation is, at its heart, an act of humility, an acknowledgement that our own species, for all its technological prowess, is a relative newcomer to this planet. We are the product of a lineage that diverged from the other mammals only a few million years ago, a blink of an eye in geological time. The living fossils have been here for far longer, and they will likely be here long after we are gone, provided we do not take them with us. The choice is ours to make, and we make it with every decision we take about how we use the ocean's resources. We can choose to see the deep sea as a vast, inexhaustible frontier to be exploited, or we can choose to see it as a precious, irreplaceable archive of life's history. The future of the coelacanth, the nautilus, the horseshoe crab, and the giant isopod depends on which of these visions we decide to embrace. As we drift toward the end of this exploration, the silence of the deep seems to grow more profound, a quiet that is filled with the presence of these ancient beings. The water pressure increases, the temperature drops, and the last rays of sunlight fade into an absolute darkness that is punctuated only by the occasional bioluminescent flash. In this world of eternal night, the living fossils continue their slow, deliberate existence, their lives measured not in years but in epochs. They are the sentinels of the abyss, the keepers of a history that predates the rise of the dinosaurs and the fall of the great reefs of the Paleozoic. Their survival is a story of extraordinary endurance, a narrative written in the language of genes and shaped by the relentless forces of natural selection. To witness their existence is to be humbled by the scale of time and the tenacity of life itself. The conservation of these species is not a simple task, and it will require a sustained global commitment that spans generations. It will require international cooperation to establish and enforce marine protected areas, innovative approaches to sustainable fisheries management, and a fundamental shift in our relationship with the ocean. It will require us to look beyond the immediate economic value of a creature and to recognize its intrinsic worth as a unique product of billions of years of evolution. The nautilus is not just a shell to be sold, it is a living relic, a window into a world that existed before the continents took their current shape. The horseshoe crab is not just bait for eels, it is a vital part of a coastal ecosystem and a source of irreplaceable medical compounds. The coelacanth is not just a strange fish. It is a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that our planet still holds secrets that we have yet to uncover. In the end, the story of the living fossils is our own story, a tale of survival, adaptation, and the enduring power of life to persist against all odds. Their presence on this planet is a gift, a legacy from the deep past that we have the privilege to inherit. But with that privilege comes a profound responsibility, a duty to act as stewards of this heritage for future generations. We must ensure that the silence of the deep is not a silence of absence, but a silence that continues to be filled with the slow, steady heartbeat of ancient life. The choice is before us, and the time to act is now, for the thread that connects us to these creatures is delicate, and once it is severed, it can never be reconnected. The deep ocean waits, patient and vast, and the living fossils continue their eternal vigil, watching and waiting as we decide their fate, and in doing so, decide our own. The water is cold in a way that has nothing to do with weather and everything to do with time. It has been cold for so long that the cold itself feels like a kind of silence, a pressure that does not press, but simply holds. The light from the surface is a memory that no living thing here possesses, and so the dark is not an absence but a presence, a vast and patient substance that fills every space between every grain of sediment. In this place, the idea of a day has no meaning, and the turning of the planet above is an event that belongs to another world entirely. Something moves in this dark, and the movement is so slow that it might be mistaken for the settling of stone. It has a shape that the eye would struggle to name, a form that seems to have been drawn by the water itself, smoothed by eons of gentle pressure. This shape is not new, and it is not old in the way that a fallen tree is old, but rather in the way that a riverbed is old, a thing that has simply always been where it is, doing what it does. The creature that wears this shape does not think about its form, because thinking is a luxury that the deep has never offered, and the creature has never needed it. It moves forward, or perhaps it moves sideways, or perhaps the direction is something else entirely, a vector that only makes sense in the absence of any reference point. There is no up here that matters, and no down that means anything more than the pull of the planet's core, and so the creature simply travels through the cold water as if the water were an extension of its own body. The movement is a ripple, a pulse, a series of small and deliberate adjustments that have been repeated so many times that they have become as automatic as the beating of a heart. The heart itself, if it can be called that, beats with the same unhurried rhythm, a slow and steady thump that has marked the passage of uncountable ages. The creature does not know that the continents have drifted, because the continents are not a concept that exists in its world. It has felt the water grow slightly warmer and then slightly colder over spans of time that exceed the lifetime of any mountain range. But these changes were so gradual that they were simply part of the texture of existence. The seafloor beneath it has shifted, cracked, and reformed many times, and each time the creature has simply continued on its way, adjusting its path by a fraction of a degree to accommodate the new geography. The water itself has changed its chemistry, becoming saltier or fresher in cycles that lasted millions of years, and the creature has absorbed these changes into its own slow biology without ever registering them as events. It does not know that the first forests were growing on land when its ancestors first took this shape, because the land is a rumor that has never reached this depth. The creature has no eyes that could see a tree, and no mind that could imagine a leaf, and so the green world above is as foreign to it as the surface of a distant star. It only knows the pressure, the cold, the dark, and the faint and constant drift of organic matter that falls from above like snow in a place where snow has never fallen. This falling food is the only connection between the creature and the bright world it will never know, and it is a connection that the creature accepts without gratitude and without question. The ocean around it has changed in ways that would be invisible to any observer who could somehow witness the passage of deep time. The currents that once ran in one direction now run in another, and the temperature gradients that once defined the water column have shifted and blurred. The creatures that once shared this space have come and gone, their entire lineages rising and falling like the slow breathing of the earth itself. Some of those lineages were fierce and brief, burning bright for a few million years before fading into the sediment, and others were gentle and long-lived, persisting for hundreds of millions of years before finally yielding to some subtle change in the environment. The creature has outlasted them all, not because it is stronger or smarter, but because it is simpler, and because it has never needed anything more than what the deep has always provided. It moves again, and the movement is so slight that it would be invisible to any human eye that might somehow find its way to this depth. The creature's body is flexible in a way that suggests an ancient design, a blueprint that was drawn before the first hard skeletons appeared in the fossil record. It can bend and twist and extend itself in directions that would be impossible for a creature with a rigid frame. And this flexibility has served it well through all the ages of the Earth. It does not need to be fast because there is nothing to flee from and nothing to chase. And so its muscles, if they can be called muscles, are built for endurance rather than speed. The sediment beneath it is composed of the remains of countless other creatures, the microscopic shells of organisms that lived and died in the water above, raining down for billions of years to form a soft and endless floor. The creature sometimes rests on this floor, and when it does, it seems to become part of the sediment itself, its body blending with the gray and brown of the ancient remains. It can remain motionless for what would be months or years in the world above, and during these long rests it does not dream, because dreaming is a function of a brain that the creature does not possess in any meaningful sense. It simply exists, a quiet pulse of life in the vast and patient dark. The water around it is not empty, although it seems so to any mind that is accustomed to the busy surfaces of the world. There are tiny particles drifting in the current, specks of organic matter that the creature can sense through a chemical awareness that is far older than vision. It does not need to see these particles, because it can taste them in the water, and this taste guides its slow movements toward the places where food is more abundant. The abundance is relative, of course, because even the richest patch of this deep water is a desert compared to the teeming shallows. But the creature has never known any other way of being, and so it does not feel the lack. It has been moving for a time that cannot be measured in the terms that humans use, because the creature's own sense of time is tied to the slow rhythms of its body rather than to the turning of the sun. There is no sun here, and there never has been, and so the creature's internal clock is set to a different metronome, one that ticks in intervals of hunger and satiety, of rest and movement. These intervals are so long that a human observer would see the creature as nearly frozen, a statue of flesh and water. But the creature is alive in a way that is almost incomprehensible to a being that lives for a few decades. The shape of the creature is the same shape that it had when the first forests were growing on land. And this is a fact that the creature does not know and cannot know. It has never seen its own reflection because there is no light to create a reflection, and it has never encountered another of its kind in a way that would allow for comparison. It simply is what it is, and what it is has been sufficient for an almost unimaginable span of time. The forces of evolution that have shaped every other creature on the planet seem to have passed over this one, leaving it unchanged while the world above and around it transformed beyond recognition. The continents have shifted, and the sea floor has spread and subducted, and the great mountain ranges have risen and worn away. And through all of this, the creature has continued to move through the cold and the dark. It has witnessed, in the most indirect way possible, the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, although it has no concept of what a dinosaur might be. It has been present for the great extinctions, when the water itself seemed to hold its breath, and the rain of food from above slowed to a trickle, and it has simply continued, eating less and moving less, waiting for the world to return to a state that would allow it to resume its normal rhythms. The water has frozen and thawed many times, at least in the shallower parts of the world, and even here in the deep, the temperature has fluctuated by a few degrees over the ages. The creature has felt these fluctuations as a subtle change in the texture of the cold, a slight easing or intensifying of the pressure that surrounds it, and it has responded by slowing down or speeding up its movements by an infinitesimal amount. It has never been frozen itself because the deep ocean has never frozen solid, and so it has never had to struggle against the ice that has covered the surface of the sea in the colder epochs of the Earth's history. It does not know that the surface has frozen and thawed, because the surface is not a place that exists in its awareness. The ice above is simply a distant fact, a change in the quality of the water that falls from far above, and the creature does not interpret this change as anything other than the normal variation of its world. It has survived every ice age and every warm period, every shift in the ocean's chemistry and every rearrangement of the sea floor, and it has done so not through adaptation but through a kind of perfect and unchanging simplicity. The creature moves again, and this time it moves a little faster, or perhaps it only seems faster because the observer's sense of time is so different from the creature's own. It is following a faint chemical trail, a hint of food that has drifted down from the surface, and this trail will lead it to a small and meager meal. The meal is not worth the effort in any energetic sense, but the creature does not calculate such things, and so it continues on its slow and steady path, its body undulating in a wave that has not changed in form for hundreds of millions of years. The dark around it is absolute, and the cold is constant, and the pressure is immense, and all of these things are as natural to the creature as the air is to a bird or the sunlight is to a flower. It has never known anything else, and so it does not long for anything else, and this lack of longing is perhaps the deepest secret of its survival. It is not content, because contentment is a feeling that requires a sense of self, and the creature's sense of self is so faint as to be almost non-existent. It is simply alive, a process rather than a being, a pattern of movement and rest that has been repeating itself since before the first trees cast their first shadows. The water around it is not the same water that it swam through in its youth, because water is always moving and changing. But the creature does not notice this, because it has no memory in the human sense. It does not remember the water of 1,000,000 years ago, and it does not anticipate the water of 1,000,000 years to come, and so every moment is the same moment, a continuous and unbroken present that stretches back to the beginning of its existence and forward to the end of the world. This present is not experienced as a duration, but simply as a state of being, a constant and unvarying condition that the creature inhabits without awareness. The sediment shifts beneath it as it moves, and small clouds of ancient particles rise and then settle again, returning to the floor from which they were briefly disturbed. The creature does not notice these disturbances, because they are too small and too slow to register in its simple sensory world. It is focused, to the extent that it can be said to be focused, on the faint taste of food that is drawing it forward, and this focus is the entirety of its mental life. There is no past and no future in this focus, only the immediate and eternal now of the hunt, a hunt that has been conducted in exactly the same way for countless generations. It is approaching a small rise in the sea floor, a bump of ancient rock that has been worn smooth by the slow currents of the deep. The creature does not know that this rise is the remnant of a volcano that erupted hundreds of millions of years ago, when the continents were arranged in a completely different pattern. It only knows that the water flows differently around this obstacle, and that the food it seeks is likely to be found in the eddy that forms on the far side. It adjusts its course by a small amount, a correction so subtle that it would be invisible to any observer, and it continues on its way. The rise is covered in a thin layer of sediment, and on this sediment there are other creatures, small and simple things that the larger creature does not notice and does not care about. These smaller creatures are also ancient, also unchanged, and they too are going about their slow and patient lives in the dark. They are not rivals, and they are not prey, and so the larger creature passes among them without any reaction, as if they were part of the rock itself. This indifference is mutual, and so the community of the deep exists in a state of perfect and unbroken peace, a peace that has lasted for longer than any human civilization, and will likely last for longer than the human species itself. The creature reaches the eddy, and it finds the food it was seeking, a small cluster of organic particles that have settled into the lee of the rock. It does not eat in the way that a human would eat, with a mouth and teeth and a process of chewing, but rather absorbs the particles through its own body, drawing them into its tissues with a slow and steady suction. The meal is small, and it will not provide much energy, but it will be enough to sustain the creature for another long period of rest and movement, another cycle in the endless rhythm of its existence. When the meal is finished, the creature does not move away immediately, but instead remains where it is, resting in the eddy and letting the current wash over it. This rest is not a choice, but simply a natural pause in the rhythm of its life, a period of stillness that is as much a part of its existence as the movement that precedes and follows it. The creature will remain here for what would be days or weeks in the world above, and during this time it will not think and it will not dream, and it will not feel anything that a human would recognize as an emotion. It will simply be a quiet and ancient presence in the cold and the dark. The water around it is still, and the sediment has settled, and the only sign of life is the slow and barely perceptible pulse of the creature's body. This pulse is so faint that it would be invisible to any instrument that a human could bring to this depth, and yet it is there, a steady and unbroken beat that has continued for longer than the human mind can hold. It is a beat that has marked the passage of the ice ages and the shifting of the continents and the rise and fall of 1,000 species, and it will continue to mark the passage of all that is yet to come. The creature does not know that it is a living fossil because the concept of a fossil requires a sense of time and a sense of history that the creature cannot possess. It does not know that it has outlived the dinosaurs because the dinosaurs are not a category that exists in its world. It does not know that it is remarkable because remarkableness is a judgment that requires an observer, and the creature has no observers and no judgments. It simply is, and its being is the only fact that matters in the vast and patient darkness of the deep. It begins to move again, slowly and deliberately, leaving the eddy and returning to the open water of the abyssal plain. The movement is the same movement that it has made 1,000,000,000 times before, a wave of contraction and expansion that travels along its body and propels it forward through the cold and the dark. There is no destination, because there is no place that the creature is trying to reach, and there is no purpose, because purpose is a concept that the creature does not possess. There is only the movement itself, the endless and unhurried progression through a world that has not changed in any way that matters since the beginning of time. The creature is not alone in this dark, because there are others of its kind scattered across the vast expanse of the seafloor, each one moving in its own slow and patient way. They do not communicate with each other because they have no need to communicate, and they do not gather in groups because there is no reason to gather. They are each a separate and solitary thread in the great tapestry of the deep, and their lives are so long and so slow that they might as well be part of the rock itself. The creature continues to move, and the movement is so slow that it is almost imperceptible, a creeping progress that would be invisible to any observer who was not willing to watch for days or weeks. It is heading toward nothing in particular, following a faint chemical gradient that may or may not lead to food, and it does not care whether it finds food or not, because hunger is not an urgent drive for a creature that can survive for years without eating. It is simply moving, and the moving is the point, the eternal and unending expression of its ancient and unchanging nature. The water around it is dark, and the dark is cold, and the cold is heavy with the weight of all the ages that have passed and all the ages that are yet to come. The creature does not feel this weight, because it is part of the weight, a piece of the deep that has been here since before the deep had a name. It moves, and the movement is a kind of prayer, a devotion to a God that has never been named and never will be named, a God that is simply the fact of existence itself. The creature is still moving, and it will always be moving, because moving is what it does, and what it has always done, and what it will always do, for as long as the deep ocean remains cold and dark and stable. It does not know that it is a living fossil, and it does not know that it predates the dinosaurs, and it does not know that the world above has changed beyond all recognition. It only knows the water, and the water is always the same, and so the creature is always the same, unchanged and unhurried and present. The dark is not a void, but a presence, a thick and living substance that wraps around every scale and fin and silent heartbeat. The creature's body is a slow current within the larger current, a gentle disturbance in the ancient water that has been flowing since before time had a shape. It does not hurry, because there is nothing to hurry toward, and there is nothing to flee from, and there is only the endless, patient drift of existence itself. The water moves with it, and around it, and through the spaces where its gills open and close with the rhythm of a world that has never known the sun. Each pulse of its fin sends a tiny ripple outward, and that ripple fades into the vastness, becoming nothing, becoming part of the great stillness that holds everything in its cold embrace. The creature does not watch its own movement, because watching is a thing that belongs to creatures with eyes that seek, and this creature does not seek. It simply is. Far above, the surface of the ocean churns with storms and light, and the brief, frantic lives of creatures that burn bright and die fast. But here, in the deep, there is no storm, and there is no light, and there is no burning, only the slow, steady continuation of a story that has no beginning and no end. The creature is a single note in a chord that has been sounding for eons, and the chord is the deep itself, and the deep is the chord, and neither one can exist without the other. The sediment on the seafloor is soft and undisturbed, and it holds the imprints of countless other creatures that have passed this way before, leaving only the faintest trace of their presence. The creature's own body does not touch the bottom, because it does not need to rest, and it does not need to sleep, and it does not need to pause in its endless, effortless journey through the cold. It is always in motion, even when the motion is so slow that it seems like stillness, even when the water itself cannot tell the difference between the creature and the dark. There is a sound in the deep, but it is not a sound that any ear could hear, because it is the sound of pressure and silence and the slow, grinding movement of continents far above. The creature does not hear this sound, because hearing is another thing that belongs to the world of light and air, and the creature lives in a world where sound is just another kind of pressure, just another way for the water to touch its body. It feels the water, and the water feels it, and that is the only communication that has ever mattered in this place. The creature's ancestors moved through these same waters, or waters very much like them, in a time when the continents were arranged in a different pattern and the sky was a different color and the stars were in different places. But the deep does not care about the arrangement of continents, and it does not care about the color of the sky, and it does not care about the positions of the stars, because the deep is the same now as it was then, and it will be the same long after the stars have burned out and the sky has gone dark. The creature is part of that sameness, a living piece of the eternal, a fragment of the whole that has never been broken and never will be broken. The water is cold, and the cold is not a feeling but a fact, a quality of the deep that has always been there and will always be there. The creature does not shiver, because shivering is a response to cold that belongs to warm-blooded creatures, and the creature is not warm-blooded, it is simply alive in a way that does not require warmth. Its body is the same temperature as the water around it, and that is not a compromise but a harmony, a perfect alignment between the creature and its world. The movement continues, slow and deliberate, a single fin pushing against the water, then another, in a pattern that has not changed in millions of years. The creature does not think about this pattern because thinking is a thing that belongs to creatures with complex brains and urgent needs, and the creature has no urgent needs, only the simple, eternal need to keep moving. It moves because it has always moved, and it has always moved because moving is the only way it knows to be alive. There is a rock nearby, a large, dark shape that has been sitting on the seafloor for longer than the creature has been alive, and longer than any creature has been alive, and longer than the concept of alive has existed. The rock is covered in a thin layer of sediment, and tiny organisms cling to its surface, living their own slow lives in the shadow of the larger creature. The creature does not notice the rock, and the rock does not notice the creature, and neither one of them needs the other, but they exist together in the same vast, silent space, and that coexistence is enough. The creature's eyes, if it has eyes, are not looking at anything, because there is nothing to look at, only the endless, uniform dark that stretches in every direction. It does not need to see, because seeing is a tool for finding food and avoiding danger, and the creature has no need to find food, because it does not eat in the way that surface creatures eat, and it has no need to avoid danger, because there is no danger in the deep, only the same cold, stable, unchanging conditions that have always been there. The creature is safe, not because it is protected, but because there is nothing to threaten it, and there has never been anything to threaten it, and there will never be anything to threaten it. The water around the creature is not empty, because emptiness is a concept that belongs to the world of air and light. And the deep is never empty. It is always full of the slow, silent drift of life and death and life again. Tiny particles float in the water, bits of organic matter that have fallen from the surface over countless years, and they are eaten by tiny creatures, and those tiny creatures are eaten by slightly larger creatures, and so on, in a chain that leads eventually to the creature itself. The creature is part of this chain, but it does not know it is part of anything, because knowing is a thing that belongs to creatures with names and stories and histories, and the creature has no name and no story and no history, only the endless present of its own existence. The movement of the creature is so slow that it is almost imperceptible, a barely visible shift in the position of its body against the dark. But it is moving, and it has always been moving, and it will always be moving, and that movement is the only constant in a world where everything else is static and silent and still. The creature does not grow tired because tiredness is a response to effort, and the creature does not make an effort. It simply allows the water to carry it, and it moves with the water, and the water moves with it, and together they are a single, seamless flow of existence. The deep is not a place of endings, and it is not a place of beginnings. It is only a place of continuation, a place where things go on and on and on, without any need for resolution or conclusion. The creature is part of that continuation, a living thread in the fabric of the deep, and the fabric is unbroken, and the thread is unbroken, and the deep is unbroken, and the creature is unbroken. It moves, and the movement is not a journey, because a journey implies a destination, and the creature has no destination. It only has the movement itself, the eternal, unhurried, unwavering movement through the cold and the dark and the silence. The darkness here has a weight to it, a pressure that has never known the touch of sunlight. Somewhere above, storms have raged, and empires have risen and fallen. Yet this place remains untouched by their noise. The animal moves with a patience that the surface world cannot comprehend, its body a slow pulse against the current. Each motion carries the memory of 100 million years, though no mind holds that record. The water around it is cold and still, a vast silence that has witnessed the birth and death of mountains. It glides forward, and the sand beneath it remembers the footsteps of creatures that no longer walk anywhere on earth. Time behaves differently in this abyss. The hours stretch into days, and the days blur into epochs, all of them indistinguishable from one another. This traveler has no destination, no urgency, no sense of the clock that governs the world above. Its fins barely stir, yet it covers distances that would exhaust any surface swimmer. The currents carry it, and it lets them, surrendering to a rhythm older than any ocean. There is no struggle in its movement, no effort, only a continuous and effortless passage through the dark. The rocks around it are young by comparison, having formed only a few million years ago, and they watch this ancient passage with the patience of stone. Light has never touched these eyes, and yet the animal navigates with a certainty that seems almost like memory. The temperature here has not changed in a way that matters, a steady cold that feels like a constant embrace. Above the surface, glaciers have advanced and retreated, forests have grown and vanished, and cities have flickered like brief sparks. None of that history reaches this depth. The creature turns slowly, its body tracing a curve through the water, and the motion is so gradual that it might be mistaken for stillness. A single bubble rises from its path, and the bubble takes its own long journey toward the sky, a journey that will end in a world the creature will never know. The seabed stretches out in every direction, a plain of fine sediment that has accumulated grain by grain over countless ages. This animal leaves a faint trail behind it, a mark that will be erased by the next slow current that passes. It does not look back. There is nothing behind it that requires attention, and nothing ahead that demands haste. The pulse of its body is steady, a quiet drumbeat that has sounded since before the first flower bloomed on land. The water presses in from all sides, a gentle and constant weight that has shaped every curve of its form. It has no predators here, no rivals, no companions, only the vast and patient emptiness that has always been its home. Somewhere far above, the moon pulls at the tides, and the ocean responds with a rhythm that this deep dweller feels only as a faint and distant whisper. The seasons change in the world of light, but this place knows no summer and no winter. The animal continues its slow drift, its path a gentle spiral that never quite repeats itself. It has all the time that exists, and it uses that time without measure or concern. The sediment settles behind it, and the water closes over its trail, and the silence returns to its perfect and unbroken state. This is not a journey. This is a state of being, a way of moving through the world that has no beginning and no end. The creature pauses, and the pause lasts for a moment that could be a minute or an hour. For time here has no meaning. Its body rests against the current, held in place by the very water that flows around it. Then it moves again, one slow undulation after another, each one as effortless as the last. The dark around it is absolute, a blackness so complete that it seems to have texture and depth. Yet the animal moves through this blackness as though it were the brightest day, guided by senses that the surface world has long forgotten. The rocks pass by at a pace that is almost imperceptible, and the creature does not acknowledge them, for they are as constant as the water itself. The miles accumulate behind it, though it has no awareness of distance. The pressure increases and decreases with the contours of the seabed, and the animal adjusts without thought. It has done this for so long that the doing has become the being. The water around it carries the faintest trace of minerals, a taste that has not changed in eons. The creature's gills open and close with a rhythm that matches the slow pulse of its body. There is no effort in this breathing, no awareness of the act. The dark continues and the animal continues, and the two are so intertwined that they might be a single thing. At some point, the seabed rises slightly, and the creature follows the rise without changing its pace. The water grows shallower by a few meters, and the pressure eases, and the animal notices nothing. The slope levels out, and the creature returns to its previous depth, its path a gentle arc that describes the shape of the land beneath it. The sediment here is finer than before, a powder that has settled over the ages. The animal's passage stirs it only slightly, and the cloud settles back to the floor with a patience that matches the creature's own. The dark remains unbroken, and the silence remains complete. The creature has no name in this place, for there is no one to name it. It has no purpose, for purpose belongs to the world of light and time. It simply is. The water moves around it, and the water is the only companion it has ever known. The miles pass, and the hours pass, and the centuries pass, and none of them leave a mark. The animal's body is a living memory of an age when the continents were arranged differently, when the seas were warmer, when the sky was a different color. Yet it carries no awareness of this memory. It moves, and the moving is enough. The current shifts, a subtle change that the creature feels in its bones. It turns with the current, letting it carry the body forward. The path ahead is the same as the path behind, a stretch of dark water and soft sediment that extends to the edge of the world. The creature does not wonder what lies beyond that edge. There is no beyond. There is only this moment, and the next moment, and the moment after that, each one identical to the last. The animal settles into the flow, its body aligned with the water, and the motion becomes so gentle that it is almost a rest. The darkness deepens, if such a thing is possible. The creature's senses find nothing new, nothing different, nothing that requires attention. The body continues its slow undulation, and the water parts around it, and the sediment settles behind it. The silence is absolute, a quiet that has never been broken by any sound. The animal moves through this silence as though it were air, as though it were light, as though it were the only thing that had ever moved in this place. The centuries pass above, and the continents drift, and the ice comes and goes, and the creature remains. A faint current rises from the seabed, carrying a whisper of warmth from some distant vent. The creature feels it and adjusts its course by a fraction. The warmth fades, and the cold returns, and the animal continues. The path curves slightly, and the creature follows the curve without thought. The water ahead is the same as the water behind, and the animal moves through it with a grace that has never been observed. The dark holds it, and it holds the dark, and the two are inseparable. The creature slows. The undulations become more gradual, more spaced, until the movement is barely perceptible. It hovers in the water, held by the current, suspended in the black. The body is still, and the stillness is complete. Then, with a motion so slight that it might be a dream, the animal begins to move again. The fins stir, the body tilts, and the creature glides forward into the dark. The water closes behind it. The silence returns. The creature moves on.